Hey, what's up everybody who's watched my videos? I'm back with another DDR interview video. For those who've watched my previous videos, you guys have heard me talk about Digital Life, and you've heard me talk about Sportsworld, and you heard me mention the guy who's been behind a lot of tournament related things and part of the DDR community back when I played. And that is Sammy. So I have Sammy here.
Hi, everybody.
And you know, I thought it would be cool, and Sammy thought it would be cool to get in front of a camera and just kind of talk about DDR from his point of view, because when I played, I was a player. Like, I didn't really run any tournaments. Sammy was also a player, but Sammy was heavily involved in doing a lot of tournament related things. So why don't you just introduce yourself, let people know, you know, who you are, and then we could just take it from there.
I'm Sammy Elkassir. Grew up in Fort Lee, New Jersey. Currently 41 years old, and I first discovered DDR in late 2001.
Okay.
And we could just go from there.
Okay. Why don't you talk about like how you discovered DDR? Because from my point of view, I always find it interesting, like how people stumbled upon it, or you know, like what was it like for you to get into DDR? Because that's the beginning of it.
Sure.
You know?
So going back, Sportsworld was in Paramus, New Jersey. It was like one of the big arcades in Bergen County. I had been going there since I was 10 years old. They used to have card conventions. I met Bret Hart there once, a pro wrestler, when he was Intercontinental Champion. So I'd been going there a long time. And one day I think it was like the late summer of 2001, I was there and I saw this machine next to the front desk. I had no idea what it was. I'm pretty certain the first song I ever played was Boom Boom Dollar Standard. And I just totally, just like any new player trying to do something like that, it was like, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And you know, I was with a friend and we just left. And I was working as a software developer at the time, and I was doing inventory in Baltimore for the company. We were at GameStop, and I saw in the corner of the GameStop this box that had what turned out to be the Konami soft pad and DDR. I'm like, that's the thing I played in Sportsworld. Mm-hmm. And I had my PlayStation with me, so I just bought it. And I remember being in the hotel room, had to have been 3-4 hours every night we were there doing the lesson modes, playing all of just trying to get into it and stuff. And at the time I was also doing local pro wrestling, and I was kind of dividing my time between the pro wrestling and the DDR, because I just fell in love really fast and started going to Sportsworld more and made some friends like Mike Indo and Ken Chico. I think it was Ken Chico that I first played on that Boom Boom Dollar thing I did. And it just kind of took off from there. And they told me about DDR Freak and the community and things like that. It sort of just became a love immediately. And I gave up the pro wrestling around that time. And I'll never forget the last time I did pro wrestling training. This was after the first Sportsworld Tournament, which we'll get to, but it was Extreme finally came to Sportsworld, and I just left the wrestling just to go play it, even for like a half an hour. It was just a love. And like you said, I consider myself more of a player than anything else. I might not be on the top level, but it's more of there's just something about it that was just gravitating. And the PlayStation versions really helped to segue to the arcade.
Yeah. That's an interesting way to get into DDR. One thing that you mentioned that I always found interesting was that you're from New Jersey. So you're like, I'm from New York City. A lot of my videos are based on the history of New York City DDR, but you can't really talk about New York City DDR without talking about places like Long Island, Connecticut back in the day, but especially New Jersey. There was a lot of friendly rivalry between New Jersey and New York City. And then there were really good arcades. I've only been to Sportsworld. I think I went once for the tournament in 2003, which we'll talk about. And then I think when me and you linked up to test 2005, which we'll talk about as well. I think we stopped there real quick. I think
so.
But I hadn't really gone there. So I want you to talk about like how New Jersey DDR was, the arcades, the players, and what you remember about like the up and comers, what it was like when you guys got 5th, 6th, 7th mix, and fun. What was it?
Fun and games.
Fun and games. 8 on the break. Sportsworld.
So I guess you could say in the community sense, I was mostly Sportsworld. We had Sportsworld in Paramus, Fun and Games in Wayne at Willowbrook, and then the main place, which I live very close to now, is 8 on the Break. But I was more of a Sportsworld player in that sense, and a lot of my friends, even my best friend Corey, we met each other. He worked for Sportsworld at the time. And so, to be honest, I can't speak too much about the rivalry that you're talking about, or the friendly rivalries that went on. I know that 8 on the Break had a lot of the other big tournaments in New Jersey. Champions of the Coast happened every year. There were some of the New York players would come out. Gilbert came out a lot to Sportsworld. I remember seeing him a lot. Yeah.
If you didn't drive, you could get to Sportsworld from New York City? Like a bus?
I imagine, I know there are buses that go up Route 17. So yeah, you could probably take the bus up there. It was next to the old Circuit City and the Suburban Diner. But, when you're sitting there playing, back then especially, we didn't have our smartphones back then. The coin line sometimes you'd wait an hour, but because of all of the people there, you're always interacting with someone. Yeah. And sometimes you'd go play other games like Soul Calibur or Mortal Kombat while you're waiting your turn. And so even though you were only getting, like, let's say, Sportsworld was different. They set it to 4 songs, and then for the later mixes, extra stage. So you got up to 5 songs, six if you really could get the one more extra stage. But you pretty much got 4 songs an hour. And it didn't really matter. When I first went there that first time, I think it was 3rd mix Korea 2. When I started playing there more regularly, it was 5th mix. And then eventually it became 7th mix, and they got a 2nd machine for Extreme.
Who else played at Sportsworld? Like back then?
Mike Indo, who helped run the tournament. My friend Corey worked there. He played a lot. Ken Chico was one of the first people that played there. Okay. There were a lot of people. My memory isn't the best for certain reasons when it comes to this stuff.
But like I know, like if you ask me, like 10, you remember 10? When I was coming up, he was like one of the best players in our region. He was like 8 on the break. Like from what I remember, he was definitely 8 on the break. I don't know who I would have said was from Fun and Games.
I don't know the Fun and Games crowd. I think players like Dollar Bill and Jim the Fly were probably more 8 on the break, is my guess. Okay. Not that they never came to Sportsworld. They certainly did. But a lot of those players didn't necessarily come as often as the ones that I'm mentioning. The ones I'm mentioning were there all the time. There was Andrew, my friend Andrew at the time. There was a player, Stefan, not the same Stefan that you might know. Like I said, my involvement in the community was a little bit different. It was kind of running business and running tournament while being a player. So I wasn't as familiar with everyone, and a lot of memories have kind of lapsed. But a lot of the other players, I would say, were going to 8 on the break that you might be more familiar with, and certainly Fun and Games. I know Matt said he would go to Fun and Games quite often, not like every day or anything like that. Yeah. We'll talk about like the tournaments and stuff, but prior to me playing was Jackie.
I remember her, yeah.
And she did participate in the first Sportsworld Tournament, technically. Like, she came out of retirement for one night for that. Oh, wow. But that was before my time. A lot of this was before. I think a lot of the people, when they really started, in your retrospective, was before my time. Because I started at the arcade really in 2002.
Okay. I should have asked you this before, but I couldn't remember your nickname when I was initially talking about you, but your nickname, Don Frequency, reminded me was SFE Taz, right?
Yeah.
How did you get that?
It was my initials and Taz. I was 16 when I created it. Taz was a reference to the ECW wrestler at the time. It's not something that's really pronounceable like Frequency or Sketch, but I've switched it to Shiki Diki.
Okay. Well, you play now, so we'll get into that as well. But Sammy he plays. Not that you still play like you played, and then I would say you kind of stepped away for a while, and now you play again. Mm-hmm. So that was New Jersey DDR, and I'm pretty sure there were other places in Jersey, but from a New Yorker's perspective, it was like Fun and Games was the easiest one to get to. Mm-hmm. 8 on the Break was an easy-ish to get to. It was just a long trip, but like those two arcades were known. But Sportsworld, especially because of the tournaments, like for people in my class of DDR players, we came to know Sportsworld because of those tournaments. And like the way that a lot of us came to know you was from running tournaments, and you also owned DDR machines, right? Where you
not originally during the first tournament or the second tournament. I actually got the idea for it from the Christmas of Fire. But yeah, that came a little afterwards. But yeah.
So let's talk about Sportsworld. So the first Sportsworld tournament was in 2002.
Yeah, and it actually was technically the same day or the day before Extreme came out in Japan.
Oh wow!
It literally was like timed in that. Was in December. So I had been going to Sportsworld for DDR at that point about 6-7 months playing, and I've always had crazy ideas and a bit of boldness in that way, I suppose. And I spoke to the owners, and we were able to arrange with Larry, he was the one who owned Sportsworld at the time, to run a tournament on a Monday. And the idea was, and this will play to things later, I can bring you people on a Monday. It's not usually busy there. Mm-hmm. And so I just put it out there, Sportsworld DDR tournament on DDR Freak, and set up some prize pools. It was more like prizes than it was cash at the time. And a lot happened that week. 2 days before the tournament, I went on a date with my friend, with a couple of girls who worked at Sportsworld, and my friend Corey. It was actually the first time we ever hung out outside of Sportsworld. And by the end of the night, I was like a block away from my house, and somebody ran a red light and my car got totaled. Oh, wow. I was fine. That was literally like, the tournament was Monday. That was Saturday night at like 2 a.m.
Wow.
And I remember I was able to get to Sportsworld and to get the setup going for the tournament. And I'd never done anything like this before. And I didn't really know how the hardware worked. I was getting into IT and stuff, but I didn't really know DDR hardware, and was trying to set up some external speakers on the machine. And not realizing that these Korea cabs, it might have been the Japanese cab, I don't know which one, were link cables, not audio cables. Plugging in audio cables to the link cables, and then the monitor went out for a second. You pull them out, and there was this band on the screen, and we had to like improvise a little. We had to change the rules because originally we were allowing sudden and hidden, and it was like that wouldn't have been good for the tournament. So it did.
He was talking about that. You mentioned that.
Yeah. Lesson learned, I guess you could say. And long story, I ended up, helping to fix it for them, like funding some of that. But so we still had the tournament on the Monday. I remember about 100 to 110 people showed up.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of people. Yeah. It was like, wow.
And this was freestyle and tech?
Freestyle. The three main tournaments are in all, as I remember you asking about that, they all had heavy division, as I called it, tech. Okay. They all had standard division, and they had freestyle, yes. A lot of the freestyle videos and some of Deshaun's finals are on YouTube.
Who recorded that? Do you know? Was it Dollar Bill who recorded it?
I don't remember who, I don't know. I actually have no idea. It might have been, the player's name was Dumpster Keeper. He might have helped set that up. He got 4th place actually in freestyle.
Yeah, I know who that is.
So yeah, 100. And so the owner was there, And he wasn't happy about what happened with the machine, but he was happy to see all those people there on a Monday.
Yeah.
You know, he's a businessman, and for first and foremost. And so, in the end of the day, it did work out like that, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was a new experience for me trying to run something like this. I had a lot of specific ideas when it came to, especially freestyle. I had multiple judges that had different categories, like, you know, danceability. I had one judge whose rating crowd reaction, actually.
Okay.
Didn't really stick with that one as much, but and so you could say a lot, especially when you come to some of the stuff you talk about with like certain rule sets, like it's all new. This is the first time any of us are doing this. And I might have been the one to, and I'll say this a lot, I might have been the one to like start the process, but this was a group thing. Mm-hmm. Corey helped, Andrew helped, Stefan helped, Indo helped, and especially Dwayne, who worked at Sportsworld. So one of the things that happened in the tech division, they had wanted to get some new parts for the machine for the tournament. Okay. So they used Channel Beat to get their things.
I remember. I was looking at that website a few days ago, actually.
And they have alternative parts. Their sensors aren't official sensors. They're kind of cheaper sensors, but they worked. And they also ordered brand new arrows. And that was the only tournament that I ran that I entered, because I knew I had no shot of winning it, but I just wanted to participate. And it was the third round match that I had. I don't remember who my competitor was. And in the middle of the match, I hear a bunch of like, "Oh my God, oh, whoa, whoa, whoa," and like, what happened? And I look down, the bottom arrow on my opponent's side cracked. Welcome, no offense, Channel Beat, but they did refund them their money, but just to make a point. And so I'm like, okay, this is bad. So I run to look for Dwayne, who works at Sportsworld, who also at the time worked for Betson. Mm-hmm. And he had the old arrows, the original official Konami arrows, and just was able to, within like 10 minutes, get it installed and ready to go. And you had people there putting their coats on, getting ready to leave, because they figured without an arrow, it's over. Yeah. But we were able to keep it going. And then we finished our match, and he beat me, and things continued to progress. And I don't remember his name, but in the standard division, the finals, it was an Asian gentleman. In the last song, one of the highlights of the night, he got a AAA on his last song.
Oh, in 7th mix, wow.
Yeah, on 7th mix AAA. And back then, you needed to get all perfects. There was no greats allowed. Yeah. So that was like an amazing moment, like an Aaron in Japan moment, if you will.
I try to emphasize that in some of my videos, that like, I know that the community is like, has pushed the meta and like the skill level so far, but that's part of the magic back then. Like there was so much we didn't know how to do. Mm-hmm. So to see somebody get a AAA on standard was probably a really big deal. I wasn't there for this tournament, but like that was probably.
Everybody was going wild. I don't know if there's a video of it online, but it was an incredible moment, and certainly did enjoy freestyle. Sora was one of the participants.
That video's on YouTube, yeah.
A lot of them are. Jiffy was in that tournament. I think Jing might have been. John Avalishi was his name. He's the one who got second place, and of course Frequency got first place.
Yeah, me and Don have spoken about that. Like, I think there was like a bit of they kind of butt heads a little bit. Frequency and John
Avalishi.
Is that the year he did like a kung fu routine?
Yeah, he did like a drunken kung fu routine on Healing Vision, and in the slowdown he did a back handspring.
Oh, okay.
And there were, like I said, there were 5 judges, each with their own category, each with their own scores. So it ended up being a score-based freestyle decision, where the next year where there was more of a discussion of who should win and stuff. But Frequency won it, and his name is slipping my mind right now, but my favorite routine from that freestyle was third place, the DXY.
Was that Nugget?
No, it wasn't Nugget. He was from Connecticut,
Wicked.
though. Wicked. That's it. Yeah, I thought it was Wicked. I loved his routine that year. Especially, it just went with the song so well. And as someone who, back then you could say DXY was more of a challenging song. It wasn't like he did it on heavy, but to pull that off, what he did was, to me, that was my favorite.
Was that the one where he pulled the camera?
Yeah, smile.
Yeah.
So it was. It's hard to fully engross yourself when you're quote unquote running it, but it was still a very amazing time for sure. And I'm really glad that we did it. And it's thanks to everybody that was involved that we were able to do it.
Yeah, like from my memories of Digital Life, you and Mike did a lot of tournaments together, but even back then, Mike was helping you run these tournaments.
Yep, for sure.
That's awesome. And so in 2003, was that Christmas of Fire?
Yeah, late 2003, a year later.
Did you start getting into the business of like purchasing machines or renting them out before? Or that
Christmas of Fire is where I got the idea.
Okay.
We could just, there's not much to talk about that year, just a lot of DDR Extreme, I guess you could say. But decided to do another tournament. I think even Sportsworld had reached out to me, would you like to do it again? And this time, instead of being in the main area downstairs, we got a private room upstairs. So they moved the machine upstairs for us. And that's where frequency first really became a big player for me, especially, but for the tournaments, because I was having some issues with the list that I had for the participants and stuff that we needed, and he was able to get it working, and he really started to get involved in that tournament. During that tournament, there was just this lady I'd never met before talking to me, and had said, I really wish I could rent out one of these things even for a day, but all these party places are charging $1,000 a day. And just in my head, at the time I was in college, and my studying was for entrepreneurial studies, so business ownership. And it's like, I know I could do this cheaper than that. And I don't have to do it to make a big profit or a big business. I could just do it as a player and get some business experience. So the idea came from that event. We could talk about the DDR machine rentals, in a bit, but I guess you want to talk more about Christmas of Fire first.
Well, I mean, I don't have my personal experience with Christmas of Fire. It was overall a good tournament. I'm very against 2 out of 3. So in my videos, I've expressed that, but that's a personal thing. It didn't mean the tournament was bad. I have a lot of good memories personally of Christmas of Fire. I mentioned in one of my videos, that was the first time I saw somebody solve a Rubik's Cube.
Jim the Fly, you said.
And so I was like, yo, this is crazy. I just remember I didn't know how Sportsworld was set up. So I thought that the DDR machines were always upstairs. Like I didn't know that. I thought that's how Sportsworld was. And whenever I watch videos of 2002, in my head, I'm thinking that that's upstairs. I don't know what it was like before, but I just remember the whole day sitting there, messing around with the Rubik's Cube. I think that there was like a little basketball game upstairs at some point, or maybe, I don't know if there was.
I had never been upstairs prior to that.
Oh, really?
That is, I think, a private room that they had set up. The main DDR machine was always next to the front desk area. Side note, anyone who they don't have it in DDR anymore. I'm in Surrey, Japan. This is just like a tangent.
They took that.
It's not in DDR. And I think I know why. We had 2 entrances, like down the hall from the DDR machine, and then down to the right.
Yeah.
So me and some of my friends, when we were playing, especially Stefan, we would do it on standard little, which, if you know anything about that, there's like a 20-second gap in the song. We'd run around the entire building to get back to the machine before the gap was over. But yeah, the main machine was next to the front desk, and then when they got a second one, they moved the 7th mix to like a corner. But neither tournament those were set up for the event. Those were set up specifically for the Sportsworld Tournament for Christmas of Fire. Christmas of Fire for me mentally was draining. And you've mentioned this before. This ties to some of the things you've talked about time management. We had a time issue and a delay at the beginning, and one of the things we ended up having to do, which a lot of people were disappointed in, we had to cancel doubles that year. I had doubles set up for that tournament, and it was doubles, there was tech there was standard, there was freestyle. I just remember being so stressed out that day that I don't even remember exactly how everything played out. I don't remember who won first place in freestyle. I don't remember the players of the original tech division. Like, I was just trying to get the time crunch going because the employees don't want to be there till 2 in the morning. Let's say they closed at it's either 10 or 11. So, but that is where I got the idea for DDR machine rentals, and that is where Frequency really first got involved and became a really, really big part of let's say, Digital Life after that. Like, he saved my ass that day, you could say, in a lot of ways. That was a year where I do remember they took the top 5 in freestyle and all met in a room to discuss the order of who they thought overall should be first, second, third, fourth, fifth, where it was still a score-based freestyle. And every year was score-based freestyle on some level. But that was such a stressful time in my life and such a stressful time in that moment that I couldn't really absorb the tournament itself. Like, you probably remember more than I do, to be honest with you. I do remember the finals. I've always had these different ideas, and you remember that from 2005. I made the finals an Oni course, and I announced it ahead of time. But I didn't say which one, and everybody thought it was going to be Legend Road, but it was True Demon Road.
I don't remember that one. Was the end of that Max Unlimited?
It might have been.
Yeah.
It's been so long since I've played on courses on an extreme machine that I couldn't even tell. I think it was a course. It might have been a course on Max 2, actually.
I think it was, and I think that was like the Legend Road before Legend Road.
Yeah.
Because I think the last song was Max Unlimited.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And I do remember they both passed the whole thing.
And we were at, so I guess by 2003, that was.
Yeah.
That is that's interesting. No, like I don't remember a lot about that tournament. I do remember having a good time. I mentioned in one of my videos, I remember that I played 10, and at this, like when I started playing 10, he was always like almost on Deshaun's level, almost on Perfect Asymmetry's level. And so by the time Christmas of Fire happened, I was at a point where I was like, I could beat him. Like, this guy's always been like a DDR god to me, but I think I could beat him. And I picked PSMO on him, and at this time, this is when PSMO was like,
it had been a year of practice that you could have had.
And I was getting like a high A, and there were only a few people who were doing better than me at PSMO. And I picked it on him, and he almost failed it. He got really upset that I picked it on him. And I was like, why would you get mad at me? But it was weird because what I remember, there was a machine in the corner, and there was a machine kind of like in the middle of the floor. And for some reason, after we played PSMO in the corner, we had to play the rest of the set on a different machine.
Okay.
So he picked insertion on me, but we moved to the middle machine. And he beat me by a few perfects, and then the third song was random, and he beat me. But I do remember there was like 2 different machines. There was one like in the middle of the floor. But it was a fun tournament. I had a good time. And the rumors of what happened in 2002, how Deshaun won, how he went against Harold, and that's like from people in my era, that's like a legendary story about how Deshaun won the Sportsworld Tournament.
What tell me about it?
Oh man, like, so the way that I asked Deshaun about this, and the way that we heard about it, because I wasn't at 2002, was there was always like a friendly rivalry between, I say New York, but it was really at the time, it was Perfect Asymmetry versus the DMV area.
What's DMV? I'm sorry.
Like the DC, Maryland, Virginia.
Okay.
This is, we're talking about like Max Paranoia, White Silence, Big Goblin. They had, and then
those might have been the guys in the finals of 2003. Some of them. Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I don't remember his nickname. I don't remember his nickname, but Harold. That was the guy who went against Deshaun in the finals. So there was always a bit of a thing, and I think Deshaun was saying that, like, Max Paranoia was like slated to win. Like, it was like he was probably gonna win because at that time he was making a lot of noise.
Okay.
And what wound up happening is that I think Deshaun either knocked him out of the tournament or put him in losers if it was double elimination. There was something where like Deshaun went to a bunch of arcades and Don drove him around like a couple days before the tournament, and he just picked like, you know, you can pick a list of like top 10 songs or top 5 songs.
Most played?
Yeah, he went and picked like the least played, and On the Jazz was on almost all of them.
So being very strategic with that.
Right, and he practiced On the Jazz, and I think he wound up picking it on either Max Paranoia or, I'm saying Harold. I think both of them's names are Harold, but I might be getting this guy's name wrong. But the guy that Deshaun played in the finals, Zeus was his nickname.
Okay, yeah.
His nickname was Zeus. I don't know if it's because Max Paranoia's name is also Harold, so maybe Zeus's name is not Harold, but it was Zeus. And so Deshaun picked it on one of them. He might have picked it on. The way Deshaun told the story was really funny because he said that him and Max Paranoia had been talking on AOL Instant Messenger, and he said that he said something to him about On the Jazz.
You just made me feel old, by the way. Go ahead.
Wow, why did you say that?
You said AIM.
Yeah, AIM. Like a lot of people not even gonna know, but they had spoken about On the Jazz, and I think either Deshaun picked it on him or the random song was On the Jazz. So Deshaun they looked at each other to kind of say like Max Paranoia was like, damn, or Deshaun was like, this is why I'm practicing this, and Deshaun wound up doing that. But then they wound up playing. I think they played a set. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they played a set, and then they played an Oni course.
Not the first year. That was the second year. I'm pretty. Those videos are on YouTube. We can verify. I'm pretty sure it was just a final song.
Because I know
I could be wrong. This was 21 years ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago, and I think what happened was Zeus. He was into the 10 footers and 7 mix. He picked Max Unlimited on Deshaun, and he beat Deshaun on that. But I think it was an Oni course, and I think by the end of the Oni course, Zeus knew he lost, so he started like spinning and kind of freestyling.
Okay.
But it was like a big victory, and most of us knew Deshaun for being like a very chill guy. But even in the video, you see like he pops off, he claps.
He was excited. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So there was that, and then also that was the year that Frequency won the freestyle. I think that was the drifting away routine, which to me is like a legendary routine.
Oh yeah.
So a lot came out of those tournaments, especially 2002. And from people coming up like me, like during the 7 mix era, that was like, I was like one of like 50 or 60 players who were okay. But like hearing about that tournament, it was just like, this is how Deshaun won.
I was always just engrossed in the process of, I guess you'd call it running or being in charge, whatever you want to call it. But it really was a community-based thing. But you guys have always been on a higher level, whether it's freestyle or tech. Like some of the things that you guys were capable of doing back then and people are able to do now just blows my mind. And the level of thought that he put into what you're describing to find what are people not practicing, to actually put that effort in, that's quite that's deserving of, I'm not saying deserving of first place, but that's some really high level. That's high level.
We got a lot of cool stuff from Deshaun. He was a really good DDR player, and I always like to give him his flowers whenever I can because he really pushed the game forward. So yeah, and you said you got into the DDR machine rental. So let's talk a little bit about that. What was that like?
So like I said, I got the idea from Christmas of Fire, and a couple months later, I'm in Connecticut with a bunch of my friends from Sportsworld. Stefan, Corey, I think Indo was with us, buying a DDR machine from a distributor. And the idea was to rent it out, to literally just be a business that rents out Dance Dance Revolution. My strategy in my mind was at the time, these machines have value. DDR is, you could make the argument, mainstream on some level, but there's always a time limit to that kind of stuff, and to try to get out whenever the popularity might wane. That was the business strategy, you could say, is they retain value, so I could just sell them whenever I want. It took a while to get off the ground. I think I had my first rental in November of 2000. Let's see, this was 2004. Had to be 2004. So, and then I had one a couple months later. Still learning the process. This is for me having a business experience. And what I ended up settling on was $500 a day for the first day, $100 each day after that if I just leave it there. Because you had a lot of people in, like, especially in Pennsylvania near Philadelphia and stuff, they just rent it for their kids for a week, let's say, at a lot of schools. And I will say the one thing I learned about especially arcade machines is they're not meant to be moved around. So when I mentioned Dwayne before worked at Sportsworld, he worked at Betson, I would hire him to come to my house, the same garage that you saw, to do the maintenance for it. And I never really was worried about the back of the machine as much, because nobody sees that, but the pads especially before and after tournaments, it was really important to keep them up to date. Excuse me. The thing that really took it off was Anime Boston. They had reached out to me to have a DDR machine at their convention, and we had negotiated, and I stuck with this for those 2 years. I didn't charge them directly for the rental. I just had them cover the cost of transportation, cover the cost of, like, give me a room for me and whoever's helping me, which was often my friend Corey, and then there was also Steve and Josh at the time, and let me advertise the business. I made it an LLC, and I had made DDREastCoast.com was the domain that I used. Mm-hmm. And ever since Anime Boston, it was nonstop. Almost every week to every other week was I renting it out. And at some point I bought a second machine, which was a Korea cab. The original one was a Japanese cab. And I had that stationed at, like, a couple of different places, but whenever somebody wanted two, we would just, there was an agreement with the comic shop I was at to rent it out. And so I stuck with that advertising model. And that ties into Digital Life in certain ways as well, that I went to conventions in West Virginia. There was one every year in Secaucus in New Jersey. Somehow that, as a advertising strategy, just really worked. It got the name out there.
Did you have them on free play when you had them at these conventions?
Always.
Okay.
Always.
That must have been an even bigger draw.
Yes, always. The only time there was ever on coin play was at there was one place I was at for a short period of time in Scotch Plains, an internet cafe. That was a very short period of time. And then a comic book shop in North Bergen. That was there for a while. And that was, quarter based. And every time I'd go there to just, clear out the quarters, check the machine, I'd always put a couple free credits for the players and stuff. Yeah. You just press the button a couple of times. But no, it was never charge, ever. It was always free play or event mode.
And just for a second, just out of curiosity, like, for somebody who has no experience at all moving DDR machines,
Sorry.
Like, is there, like, a machine that you guys used, or, like, it was just pure, like, lifting up hundreds of pounds of, like...
Oh, God, hundreds. So each player's side, especially back then with the lights, is 100 kilograms, 220 pounds. Okay. The cabinet, without the marquee, I think, was 434 pounds. The marquee was, like, 65. We're talking about 1,000 pounds.
Yeah.
So one of the things I had was my friend Corey, who, when it was started to get difficult to move it, he just turned on his strike that literally he could just toss the pads into, like, things. At first, I would rent out U-Hauls, budget vans. I stuck with Thrifty for a while because they were a little cheaper. It fit pretty well in cargo vans, and the pads have wheels as well as the machine. Mm-hmm. So I would always detach the marquee and detach the pads, lift the feet, and we would load them into the truck, load them into the van, just with the wheels, and then set it back up, put everything together, and test it. After a while, I got a hand truck for the pads, at least. That made it a lot easier to load it onto, like, trucks and things like that. Eventually, I had to buy another vehicle one day. My other vehicle had an accident, and my car, another car got totaled from some bad weather driving. And I had this crazy idea of, I don't want to keep spending all this money renting trucks, renting vans. And I did some measurements and really, took a gamble. I got a Honda Odyssey. And I actually was able to transport it everywhere I went with a Honda Odyssey. That's
crazy. I wouldn't have guessed that an Odyssey could fit a DDR machine.
If you break it down and lesson learned much later in life. I didn't even know that back then that you could actually, there is a way to take the monitor portion away from the sub portion. Mm-hmm. So that would have made it a little bit easier back then, but we always kept the thing. But yeah, we kind of made it work. Now, I mentioned this before, these things are not meant to be moved. So it really kind of, you could say, I'm getting a little into the weeds here, messed up the back of the machine. Yeah. Like the back got like scratched up, but nobody's looking at that. The pads are beasts. They're made out of solid steel. They're really heavy. Mm-hmm. It was never really an issue in any way. Fitting it in that vehicle I was lucky. I was like, I measured it and I was worried, but I was like, no, I was able to do it. And I never intended this to be a profit business. Wasn't non-profit, but it wasn't meant to be, I'm going to make it big here. I had a little bit of thoughts of that around the Supernova time, but it was more just, I'm a player. This gives me some experience. This puts a little extra cash in my pocket. The machines should keep their value if I can time the popularity, the potential popularity dip for getting out. So it was kind of almost low risk in my mind. The biggest risk was something breaking, which in one of the rentals I had, I had to end up replacing the monitor early on before Anime Boston. So it was always an issue of worrying about those old CRTs. That's what made them really heavy, was the CRTs.
Yeah, I want to ask you at the end of this, but I don't want to forget, and I really want your opinion on the current state of home version DDR, if that's even a thing. So we have to come back to that, because
sure.
I have strong opinions on this, but like, I'm not part of the community and I don't really play anymore. But I always want to know what people think of how Konami has kind of treated the game and the lack of ability to play at home. But we'll get around to that. And that I do like. I don't remember the first time that I met you, because I feel like I knew you before the Jacob Javits tournaments. But at some point, probably on DDR Freak, you announced Digital Life. Now, that's from my point of view. Like, whatever happened leading up to you getting a spot in Digital Life was probably a story. So I want you to talk about how that came about.
You had said, what kind of connections do I have in your other videos? None. So I'm on the internet in 2004, and I see this thing called Game On. Okay. It was actually going to be at Madison Square Garden. And I was a big wrestling fan. I'm like, oh my God, DDR at Madison Square Garden? That would be like a dream for me to be able to do something like that. So I reach out to this Game On group and asking them about it. They tell me the space is $100,000. So at first I'm like, well, that's obviously not happening. And then I thought back. I had two thoughts. I remember what I said to this owner of Sportsworld. I'm going to bring you bodies. Clearly, like, these tournaments have people coming, and this is a brand new idea. So if they have a bunch of empty space, if they don't rent out everything, not only does that not look as good for the event, but it doesn't really cost anything to provide space. So I presented it to the Game On people about, I'm not a big businessman here. I'm not trying to, sell anything per se. I've got my DDR business, but I'm just a player. Mm-hmm. I'm just a guy who loves the game, and I run these events, and I can bring you people to your event. And they agreed. And it was like, okay, great. So at first I was advertising it as DDR MSG.
I don't know. I feel like I have a vague memory of that, but I don't know if you're just saying it and I'm just like, maybe I'm connecting it, but I feel like that really was the original tournament name. Okay. And then one day, all of a sudden, I find out, I don't know, I guess the Game On, whatever happened with them, all of a sudden I see an announcement that they've merged with Ziff Davis Media. Mm-hmm. They ran PC Gamer Magazine, Electronic Gaming Monthly, those groups of magazines. Mm-hmm. That this company, Ziff Davis, was doing a technology convention at the Javits Center, and they merged with them. Because what Ziff Davis wanted to do was have a technology convention / E3 for all. That was the way they marketed Digital Life. Mm-hmm.
And so all of a sudden, we're not doing it at Madison Square Garden anymore. We're doing it at the Jacob Javits Center. It's like there was a part of me inside that childish fantasy part that wanted to have the DDR at MSG, but it is what it is. And it was the same thing, same agreement with the Game On people. We'll give you the space, you take care of the rest. Mm-hmm. So it was my machine. I don't know do you remember if there were 2 machines at Digital Life or just one? I'm having a little trouble remembering that part. I don't know if I bought the second one just yet.
I don't remember. I feel like there were 2, but it would seem like a lot of work to just have one, but it might have been one because I know that, like, I know for Digital Life, there were songs that people did in freestyle. You had to switch out. I think you had to switch out.
I'll get into that. Yeah. So yeah, it had to have been 2000. It had to have been one because I wouldn't have bought a second machine after the business picked up in 2005. But so they gave us the space. I funded everything else. I paid to bring the machines there. Frequency and Osh. I'm pretty sure Osh was big involved in that year as well. Mike was big involved. Corey helped a lot. We started on Thursday. I'm pretty sure Thursday was the day that you guys tag teamed Legend Road.
That was Thursday?
I'm pretty sure that was the day. It was always supposed to be, it was a 4-day event. Thursday was always supposed to be, guys, have fun.
Yeah.
There were no events planned. And that's basically the story of how Digital Life came to be. And we had the event. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it was Thursday or Friday, but we were the star of the show.
It seemed like that from my point of view.
We were the biggest thing in the entire convention.
I just want to emphasize real quick, like this was like, it wasn't just a DDR event, and I know I've said that in my previous videos, but for anybody who is only watching this video, who didn't see my previous videos, what Sammy's talking about, Digital Life, it was like a giant convention, and DDR was one of a few hundred things in this giant area in the Jacob Javits Center. And like, I don't think that the people who ran it was expecting DDR to draw.
Not at all.
But man, like, every day that I was there, if you turned around, like, as a DDR player, like, Sammy was probably always facing people, but if I'm watching and I turn around, there's like 80, 90 people, 40 to 90 people that don't play DDR that are just watching DDR players.
I think in 2005 Freestyle on Saturday, there might have been 600 to 800 people watching.
Yeah.
I swear, I don't know if anyone got any footage of that, but there was hundreds of people watching 2005. And so they noticed that. The owner, or the guy, I should say the owner, the guy running the event, he noticed that, like, within like an hour or two. I don't remember if it was, I'm pretty sure that was Thursday, that even though you were just playing, we were drawing the crowds. Mm-hmm. And you guys were really putting on a show, you could say, whether or not people even understood what they were watching. They were enjoying it. Mm-hmm. All day, every day, 4 days. And so the guy running it noticed that and started investing in us a bit. He brought out risers for the machine. He brought out big, giant speakers to be able to hook up. I had still funded everything at that point. I funded the prize pool, which for tech was $1,000 for first place. It was $500 for freestyle. I don't remember what it was for standard, but I always remember that we have to make standard low to not encourage the best players to chase a good prize. Right. It was like, we want the best to be in the best, mm-hmm. the top. And there was supposed to be Ironman in 2004. The same Ironman that was in 2005, which will play into some of the stuff that happened there. And there was tech difficulties, effectively. I overextended myself. And I couldn't get the setup for, because this was going to be on DDR Extreme PlayStation 2 Japanese.
For 2004?
It was the exact same thing I had planned for 2004 was planned for 2005. Mm. And I'm just being as honest as I can, but I was overextending myself. I should have outsourced the technical aspect of what I was doing to somebody else. Mm-hmm. I was doing too much at once with too much time, not enough sleep. So I had to cancel Ironman in 2004. That was supposed to be Friday. It was also Standard Division Friday, if I remember correctly, and it was supposed to be Freestyle Friday. there was a lot that didn't go well that Friday from the running perspective, but it didn't seem like too many people were upset about it. Yeah. And I ended up having to postpone freestyle to Saturday because of you were mentioning before I was going to give people choices between extreme songs and fifth mix songs. Was the switching?
I don't think it might not have been fifth mix because I do remember Ash doing Flashdance. And Flashdance was
it's not on fifth mix?
It's on like an older mix, like fourth or third.
I'll have to look back into it. I swear I thought it was fifth mix that I was switching by. I might be confusing that with a rental or something.
I mean, it could have been also, maybe you have more mixes because me and Julio, we won freestyle and we did the song Mr. T Take Me Higher.
Yeah, that was 2005. Wasn't it?
No, it was 2004.
That was 2004?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
2004,
sorry, guys. I don't have the best memory.
No, it's fine. It was a long time ago. But me and Julio won 2004 for freestyle. We did Mr. T Take Me Higher.
That's like one of my favorite routines, by the way. I've always just been enamored by that one, yeah.
We had a good time doing that. But I don't remember if that was on Extreme, but that definitely was on fifth mix.
Okay.
But Ash did Flashdance in 2004, and Flashdance wasn't on Extreme or fifth mix.
Okay.
So you must have been switching mixes out like crazy.
I guess so. There was an issue where the installed discs for one of the older mixes was missing and compromised. I couldn't get it to work. By the time I even could, there was like less than an hour left in the convention, so I refunded all the freestylers' entry fee. It was only like $10 a person, and I kept the prize pool as is. So I took a hit from my bank account for that year, but it's just advertising, you could say, for the business anyways, which snowballed a bit after that. And it was, even though it was stressful the first year, it was fun. And the one thing I was hoping you could enlighten me on is because I was involved in the tournament so much, I didn't get to spend much time experiencing Digital Life. I didn't get to spend much time playing the other games, experiencing much of the technology stuff. What else was Digital Life aside from DDR? And to stress this point, that you guys still were the star of the show. I remember Jennifer Lopez was there. I
don't remember her being there. I do remember Dipset, like Cameron, like the Harlem rappers were there at one point. I remember there was I don't know if I mentioned this in one of my videos or a video that I haven't put out yet, but this is right when a new Dead or Alive came out, so Xbox was pushing it because this was the first Xbox. Yeah. So again, like that might have been 2005. So maybe that was 2005. In 2004 for sure, there was a PC building competition, and everybody was like hyped up about that. I don't remember what the prize was. The prize, I feel like it was like you get to keep the PC.
That would make sense.
So there was that. There was this this little contest. I don't even know if I'll call it a tournament. It was like, it must have been like a running company, like with running attire, and they had a pad, and it was whoever could step the most steps in like a minute would win. So we all did that.
I bet you the stamina players of today would love to try that.
There was a lot of free swag, like people would give like t-shirts and stickers, and a lot of companies that we probably didn't have any idea about, like software development. Like back then I wasn't into computer programming or anything, so like
this is all pre-smartphone and at least 2004 pre-YouTube even. Yeah,
no YouTube, none of that. So it was a lot of stuff that we didn't understand, but the stuff that we did understand was and I'm trying to remember, like I remember where 2004 was and I remember where 2005 was. So 2004 we were kind of, you guys were like kind of in the middle of we were surrounded by other stuff.
Yeah.
Kind of close to a wall, but in 2005 it was like this big corner area. It was in the corner, but it was much bigger.
Yeah.
So, I'm probably forgetting a lot too, but it was just a lot of technology. And I've said in my previous videos, this was like the closest that we've ever had to like an E3 or like a Comic-Con. It was like that kind of stuff.
It was that. I did explore the convention a little bit each year, but I didn't have much time for it. But it was basically what they were trying to go for. There's a lot of, they even introduced some other video games and stuff like that. And, 2004 was a bit more hazy and darker than 2005 overall, but it was a good time. And I do remember the finals being Reflex and Pickles.
I want to wanted to ask about that. But before you talk about that, I did want to ask. In 2004, somebody from California came to this tournament. A lot of people came to this tournament. People from Florida came to this tournament.
You had mentioned a lot of those names in your first video.
Yeah, there was a group of people from Florida. One of them was Tiger. He was like a good Florida player. I don't remember if, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you still play. Is his nickname Kaza or Kaze? Kaze?
573?
Yeah.
I'm not that familiar with
So I think he's from Florida. He was I think he was in the tournament for 2005. I don't know if it's the same person. I'm just assuming it is. But I think he's also from Florida. So I don't know if he was there in 2004. But there was a guy from California, Adam Aw, and he was in 2004.
Okay.
He played with JSB. But I think the rumor was that JSP was supposed to come to the 2004 tournament, but he didn't. Were you trying to get him to come, or do you not remember that, or like
a lot of
2005?
A lot of that stuff was 2005.
Okay.
In 2004 for me was just let's get this done, okay. Especially after it started. It
must have been the prize that attracted so many people.
I think so. Yeah, the prize and the location. I think really attracted a lot of people. Like you had said, it's like aside from JSB winning a DDR machine, I mean, I wasn't sure at the time. I didn't know that was like a large, like it was larger than what I did the prior years. The prior years was just like technology prizes, like graphics cards, things like that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to take a chance. And it wasn't, the entry fee was what, $10, $15?
It wasn't cost prohibitive.
Yeah. No, it wasn't like we're trying to like make a bunch of money off of it. There was no way there's no way from my vantage point I was gonna make more money in the tournament than I was giving away. But it was, as a player, it was just fun. So yeah, the first year was more just doing something new. Mm-hmm. And I don't think people can understand when we say like we were the biggest thing at the convention.
Yeah.
Literally nothing was more popular, and there were celebrities there more. I remember J-Lo. I remember someone who might have been Howard Stern. I know my friend said that's not Howard Stern, but you had mentioned some of the rappers and stuff. A lot of Microsoft was there. Konami wasn't there in 2004, I don't think. But they were there in 2005, and a lot of that stuff you're talking about was more next year.
And just the one other thing I'll say about how big this was. New York Comic Con now, which is huge. I don't know that much about. I've never been to New York Comic Con. I know San Diego Comic Con was the Comic Con, but New York Comic Con is almost as big as San Diego, from what I understand. But that space is the same space that Digital Life was in.
Yeah, I can imagine.
That's how big Digital Life was, that they're using that same space for New York Comic Con.
It had to have been a couple thousand square feet that they were renting out, I think.
Million, like a couple million.
Couple million? Okay, my geometry sucks at the moment.
It definitely, it was like, I was telling my wife the other day, we were talking about this. I was like, in both 2004 and 2005, where we were, it took 3 minutes just to get to the bathroom. That's how big it was. That like if I wanted to walk to the bathroom, it was like a 3-minute walk. That's how big it was. Mm-hmm. So anyway, like I cut you off a little bit. You were going to talk about the finals with Pickles and Reflex.
I just remember that they were in the finals, and it was always of note to me because Pickles was one of the few international. I mean, Canada's technically international players, and he, if I remember correctly, I'm certain of this. He was in the losers bracket going into it, and then he beat Reflex in the first. So he ended up basically playing like 3 sets in a row. Yeah. He had to play losers finals, finals A, finals B throughout. Right. And he ended up getting second place and Reflex won it. But and that ties into 2005. Like I'd always had a lot of, it was very impressive. Pickles was very impressive to me at that time. It really stuck out. Of course, Reflex won. I think Reflex would come to Sportsworld sometimes as well. I know he's more New York, but
he was from, I think, was it Middleton?
Was that in Long Island?
No, it's upstate, but it's kind of close to the city.
I kind of was familiar with him a bit, but he was young too at the time, wasn't he? Like 14 or something like that when he won. So that was really impressive, and that ended up on Sunday, and it was a funny story because I had like different bank accounts for the business. He always transferring funds and stuff, and his father calls me a couple days later, asking about this check. I gave him a personal check, and his father's old man. It's like, just give me some time I haven't had a chance to transfer the funds and stuff. But that's how much of a player I was. Or that it wasn't like I said. It wasn't like we were involved with Ziff Davis or anything like that. It was all from that side. That was all me. But especially Frequency, especially Don, especially Corey, and especially Mike. From what I can remember, those years they really made it a community thing. We all kind of made it what it was.
It was a big deal. Like I just remember it just being like a party, and it was cool because we felt like we were at home. Like all of us were from New York City. And even the people from Jersey, it wasn't that far. Like for people who played at Fun and Games, I didn't really talk about this in any of my previous videos. I had a falling out with one of the Fun and Games DDR players. Me and him almost got into a fight at Fun and Games one day over a misunderstanding. And I remember we spoke about it over the internet, and then he came to Digital Life in 2004, and we both kind of nodded, like it was just like, you're good, like everything is good. And it was like because I was like, you're in my, like you're kind of in my, this is New York City, but you're good. And it was like a nice way to settle that beef of like, this is our home, but like, you're welcome. It's cool. And
it ties into stuff I want to talk about later. But especially when you have a reason to bring yourself together as a community, it can tie a lot of binds. It can really get us back to being human towards each other.
So I don't know if there's anything significant that happened between 2004 and 2005, but 2005 was one of the most significant experiences of my life. So unless there is anything in between, I want to talk about, Digital Life 2005, but...
I could talk. A lot of that year was preparing for 2004.
So you guys knew you were going to do 2005?
They reached out to me to do it again.
Okay.
Because, like I said, we're the star of the show. And I was trying to make it as big as possible. I invited Aaron in Japan. I invited Yasu. I invited JSB. Those are the people who didn't come.
Do you know why? Like
probably a travel issue.
Okay.
It might cost more than, the first place for tech was $2,000 without a guarantee of winning. So maybe it was a cost or time issue. I don't know. Those were I reached out to them specifically, said, I'd love for you to join. So one of the Game On people kind of dissolved a bit. One of them worked for Digital Life. My main contact with them ended up working directly with the people in charge at Ziff Davis for the event. And Frequency was with me at all the meetings. We had a bunch of meetings in New York. They allocated for us, we didn't get to touch this directly, but they allocated for the DDR $25,000. And that includes the prizes, includes getting the machines, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, we had a budget of $25,000 for Digital Life 2005. And I remember I had my LLC. I was actually in communication with DDR Freak, the guy in charge of DDR Freak. I had my LLC, so I had met with him and some of the West Coast players at E3. I was able to get passes to E3 in 2005. I brought a couple of my friends, Steve and Josh, with me to E3. They were helping me with the business as well. I was trying to get as many people involved as possible. I was trying to set up a meeting with the Konami executives. I really wanted to get direct involvement. Now, the idea was to have to work together, DDR East Coast, DDR Freak, and do like a truly national, like this was a New York thing that it was big, but I wanted to be truly I advertised as a national tournament, and it was really an international tournament at the end. But I wanted to have that collaboration, but the Konami people at E3, it was just one guy. I guess you could just say he was too corporate, too higher up for this. And I do remember being at that E3 playing some of the new Xbox versions and stuff like that. So it just didn't work out to make it as big as I wanted to do. You know, some people might not like this language. I'm just crazy. I have a lot of crazy ideas. And so I was just trying to do as much as I could. But considering I had the other help and I had Ziff Davis on board, it allowed me to at least attempt to be more creative.
Yeah.
During this whole time, DDR Machine Rentals was taking off. Like I said, I was doing rentals almost every week. I had one place in Tinton Falls, New Jersey, this school that would always, they would rent it out quite often. And you know this better than anybody, but all of a sudden one day, I get a random phone call from this lady. I don't remember her name. I'll say, "Hi, this is Jen or whatever from MTV. We want to meet you and talk to you about your tournament." So I go all the way into Manhattan, down in Midtown, discuss with them, and they're basically asking me, who in the New York area can we interview for a web segment that might have a chance of winning the tournament? I said, Sketch. And you can take over the rest of that.
Oh yeah, that was them reaching out to me was fun. I don't want to talk too much about it in detail because I have a video about it, and B, you know, I don't want to take the focus away from you too much. But
to me, that's a huge thing, though. Like considering what it was. So.
It was great. I don't know if you know the politics of this, but in New York at the time, there was a gaming group called Empire. You familiar with Empire?
Mm-mm.
They mostly focused on fighting games. So the segment that MTV wanted to do with me was part of a larger show that they were putting together. It had a really bad name. It was called the G-Hole.
Okay.
I don't know who let that slide, but that was the name of, I guess it was like short for the game hole, but that was the name of the show. So they had like a good 3 or 4 people lined up. It was me. And they interviewed me, if you remember the interview. They interviewed me before the tournament.
I've watched it many times. I watched it again recently with my mom, actually.
So they interviewed me before, and then they interviewed me. They followed me around for the weekend. Then they interviewed the leader. If you have a board, you want to go down the rabbit hole, just Google Empire Triforce.
Okay.
You'll entertain yourself for a few hours. But they interviewed him the same day that they interviewed me to set this whole thing up. I don't know how they got his contact information. He was like I said, one day just Google Triforce Empire, but they were following him around for like a retro game world record, like Pac-Man or I don't know, like one of like Donkey Kong or something. But like at some point, the guys in the show, like we were at Laser Park, so they were watching me play and they were interviewing me at Laser Park. And that was when I was like backwards, and they were interviewing me doing backwards. And in the back, there was like this old game like Pac-Man, and after a while, they just stopped like filming him because they weren't even interested in what he was doing.
Oh.
And so that may sound a little callous from my point of view, but if you have any context of like Empire around this time and Triforce, you'd feel less bad about what I'm saying.
Okay.
So that's kind of how it started. It was like me, Triforce, and then there might have been other people that weren't involved in the New York area. You can't find those episodes on MTV's website anymore, as far as I know. But
your segment is still on YouTube. The Obsessed, they called it Obsessed. That's still on YouTube.
Is it on somebody's channel or is it on MTV's channel?
I don't pay attention to the.
I think it's on some. I think somebody pulled it off of like their website, which I'm thankful for. But they had like 10 or 15 episodes of different kind of gamers, first-person shooters, Triforce, and his like retro gaming world record. But that was kind of how it started, and then it led into Digital Life, where they followed me around for the weekend and that kind of stuff. But it was great, and I'm always thankful for that opportunity because not only winning the tournament, that was really what it was. It was like winning the tournament. Whenever I think about that time, winning the tournament was what meant the most to me. It wasn't even about the money. The money was a lot of money for me.
I really think people who win tournaments like that spend more than the prize pool in quarters.
Over time. So. Yeah. But when I think about it, I'm always like, I was on MTV. I was definitely on MTV, and that was really cool. So I'm always really thankful for that.
And that I bring it up because maybe a lot of younger players might not realize how DDR was mainstream back then on some level.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk about that more later when it comes to the future. But even in, I don't know if it's 2005, 2006, like West Virginia implemented DDR into their gym classes.
I heard about that somewhere, so I didn't know it was West Virginia, but yeah.
So this is basically all of 2005 getting ready for Digital Life in October. And I did have contacts at Konami, and one of the guys in charge, it wasn't in charge, I would say, of the California, Los Angeles location per se, but he was definitely in charge of the music games. Mm-hmm. He was like, maybe not, I don't remember his exact position. I remember him like even launching Karaoke Revolution. He joined us in 2005.
Oh, he did?
And he was one of the judges of Freestyle.
Oh, wow. I didn't know.
We had one of the Konami people as a judge for Freestyle on a, I will stress this, DDR Extreme Japanese machine. So it was, and it was just a big lead up to that. And you're going to talk to Frequency and Ash at some point. I really feel like they'll be able to give more details and context to this stuff. I don't have the best memory of every specific thing. It's very overwhelming at times. But for me, 2005 was the best tournament I ran, mm-hmm. or the best tournament we ran, as I like to say. And it was it's not that there were no problems, but it flowed really well, and it all had a lot of good stories. Mm-hmm. We ended up having 4 DDR machines.
I remember there were at least 3 of them.
There were 4. There were my 2 and 2 from Coney Island.
Coney Island?
Coney Island, yeah.
Oh, wow.
We got them from Coney Island. And I remember at the time the custom songs that we uploaded to their machine, we left them there so that people, if they wanted to play them at the arcade after the tournament was over. Mm-hmm. There's a lot going on that year in my personal life, a lot going on in the DDR business, and then running the tournament. And then October comes around and we get it set up. And I was able to get I redid the first thing we did was on Friday. So, like I said, Thursday was just have fun, guys. Mm-hmm. We had Paradise set up. We had Red Octane pads set up. That's the other thing. Red Octane sent us multiple pads to give away as prizes. Cobalt Flux sent us multiple pads to give away as prizes.
I don't remember why. I don't remember if it was from Freestyle.
It might have been from Freestyle.
Or part of me winning first prize, but I went home with a Cobalt Flux that weekend.
So there was a lot of sponsorship in that way too. It wasn't just the $25,000. Like all that stuff was. You had players like I don't know if people know Paradise. It was like DDR with your hands back then in a different way, but there was a lot of people getting involved. There was a lady who did a lot of the videos. I don't know if they're the videos on YouTube. You said those are Dollar Bill, but she had recorded a lot of footage and she was a student at Columbia University.
Oh wow! I'd love to get in contact with her.
I don't have a lot of those files are lost on old computers and stuff. But if somehow she's seeing this, knows what I'm talking about, reach out, please. And so yeah, it was incredible.
So before getting to Digital Life,
sure,
you had mentioned earlier you had I feel like I have to emphasize this a little bit more for people who play now, because the lines are so blurred. For people who you can buy a Stepmania. Is it Stepmania X or Stepmania X? I always forget.
The one that you can buy that's like $1,400 a pack.
Yeah, is it
the game, when I go to 8 on the Break now and play it, it's Stepmaniacs.
Okay.
Oh God, the name of the pads? I think they are Stepmaniacs pads.
Stepmaniacs, not Stepmania X. It's not pronounced.
I pronounce it Stepmaniacs. Okay. I don't know. Words have no meaning, so we can say whatever we want.
So Stepmaniacs, right? Like you can buy a DDR quality pad and play on your computer in Stepmania. You can essentially play whatever you want. And that's beautiful. I think that's great. It was almost inconceivable back in the time that we're talking about to experience something like that.
There is nothing that meets the build quality of DDR arcade pads, ITG Dedicat pads, and Stepmaniacs pads. They are designed like they're on steroids compared to everything else. The closest at the time would have been my box Blue Shark, which I think was designed to mimic the solo pad design.
Okay.
So for those who don't know, DDR pads, and I think in the Groove pads, it's 4 sensors on the outside, same as Pump It Up pads. on each panel, and then they're made out of solid steel, practically. Every other home pad, they have to, try to make money. They're often wood-based. Maybe a little bit softer, a little bit less. So yeah, you're right. Back then, to experience top quality, you either built it yourself or you were somehow able to get a machine.
And it wasn't. There were people. I knew somebody who was able to get Stepmania on a DDR machine, but this was like a really difficult process to do anything like that.
Back then, you had to solder. You basically had to solder. You didn't have some of the devices they have now. You said on Stepmania, right?
Whether either Stepmania or the other thing that I was going to say, which leads me into what I wanted you to talk about, or to play home versions on an arcade quality machine. So, and I think it's great that you could do that now. I'm trying to do that myself. Like, I would love to get either a machine or a pad that's arcade quality. But this was like a dream. Like, this was like a fantasy back then. To be able to get on a DDR machine and play Max Period, or to play like Bamani ruler stuff on like a DDR machine, that was basically a fantasy. If you could do it on a Cobalt Flux, but even Cobalt Fluxes didn't feel like arcade machines.
I had originally talked to Don about, I think it was more for 2006, doing like Ironman on Cobalt Fluxes, and he just said no.
Yeah.
He said no, can't do it. So technically back then, I think there was a product known as, it still exists now, J-Pack. So arcade machines historically have what's known as a JAMA connector. I'm getting a little technical here. And it plugs into the box for the 573 software box, that they call it, for the DDR. Okay. You could take that out and plug it into a J-Pack, and then now you have like a computer interface for your computer. For PlayStation or Xbox, you literally have to take a PlayStation controller, not an official one, a third-party one, Mad Catz, whatever, the cheapest one you could find, break it apart and solder directly on the board. That's the only way you could do it back then. That's why 2004 didn't happen, but 2005 did, was because it wasn't something that I was ready for, I guess you say, 2004, to get it done in time. Nowadays, I can't speak for. I think you might have to do the same thing for if you want to do a PlayStation 2 mix or an Xbox mix, because they don't have new mixes now. Right. But for computer, there's a lot of options. I have a device on my setup at home now that just, you take the pad connectors that are the if you imagine like this is like two players, like the inside corners where the arrows comes out is the board for the arrows, and you can just disconnect what are known as JST connectors, and they have new devices. The name of the one I'm using right now slips my mind, and you can just plug them directly in, and you have a USB cable to the computer. So things have evolved a lot in that way.
So, and the reason why I bring all this up is because I remember you reaching out to me in 2005 before the tournament, and you wanted me to test out a PlayStation 2 and a DDR machine. And I was like, shit, I'll do it. Yeah, let's do it. So you picked me up from Brooklyn. We drove out to your house in New Jersey. And I remember this. I feel like we stopped at Sportsworld real quick. But I remember doing this. I remember playing In the Heat of the Night because I hadn't played it in a while. And I was like, I want to try this out.
I just listened to that in my car earlier today.
I loved it. Man, great song. And I remember AAAing it on that. So at that time, I was like, this seems good. And I just couldn't understand, or like I wasn't really into that stuff. I didn't really crack open DDR cabinets. I didn't run tournaments or anything. But at that time, you had figured out a way to put a PS2 on a DDR machine.
Yeah, the controllers were soldered directly to like Mad Catz controllers, plugging directly into a PlayStation. This was PS2. I don't remember what device I was using at the time. Somebody else could comment on this for Japanese cabinets or Korea cabinets, how I got the video to work. There must have been a device that I bought similar to the J-Pack that would output, a component, I'm guessing, or maybe it may have been RCA, but there was definitely a device that you could plug into the machine that would convert the signal from the PlayStation to the monitor and the speakers to the, and the audio. The audio you could just actually do with the red and white cable. Those you could directly plug in. But the video, I think I bought a device for that. I don't remember what device it was. But it was two separate things. And so I actually bought what are known as JST connectors to have a separate box just to be able to play PlayStation. And being able to have that all set up allowed for us to do Ironman in 2005. And it was all custom work, all hands-on, doing it DIY.
Crazy, man.
Crazy. At least half of it was. The video was a device, but the audio was easy, and the controller was DIY.
So Digital Life comes up to Digital Life. Digital Life happens. It's gigantic.
Oh yeah.
There's things that I don't remember about Digital Life, but there are things that I do remember. And I have a video coming out soon about me talking about Digital Life. I won the first place for Tech. Pickles got second, and J-Boy got third for Tech. I was so mad at you when you switched the rules. That rule. I
was going to talk about that. You talking about Iron Man? You talking about Iron Man?
No, not Iron Man. Because I have a different recollection of Iron Man, which we could talk about. But I'm talking about like when we got to the finals.
The three-way?
Yeah, because me and Pickles were winners. Like I don't think anybody beat him, and nobody beat me. So I'm just like, all right. Like
I didn't announce a three-way final ahead of time.
I think there was something in the pamphlet that you did, but you didn't specify.
Okay.
So when I got there, I was like, damn. But it turned out okay because it really made it that much more epic. I wasn't happy about it because I had I picked very specific things on very specific people. So in my head, like I knew it was gonna be Pickles. Like I knew it was gonna be him. If it wasn't gonna be, if JSB didn't show up. And I was really scared that my friend Andre Jinx, he was really good. If he wasn't going to show up in JSB, I was like, it's going to be Pickles. So I had saved PSMO on Sudden Shuffle Flat for him. And if I had to like go balls to the wall, it was going to be Paranoia Survivor on 1.5 S4R for him. But then it was just like J-Boy. I was like, damn, like I was just like, why did they change the rules up like that? But I don't know how much you remember about this. I think for some reason we all had to play back and we all got the same score.
So I thought it was advertised as a three-way final, like ahead of time. And the way we dealt with the winners losers thing was first song, two winners, one picks the song, one picks the options. I think is what it was.
No.
You picked the song and the option.
Yeah.
So there was something. Oh, it was the third song. That's what it was. So you got to pick a song in the options. Pickles got to pick a song in the options. The third song, the person in second place gets to pick the song, and the person in first place gets to pick the options. So Pickles, so we're kind of jumping ahead a little bit here, but Pickles sat there for like 9 minutes before he said bag. Yeah. And then you immediately said 3x solo. I think it was like 3x solo. Immediately. It took you no time to react to that.
And we all got the same score. We all got the same grades.
Yes. You literally all tied bag. All three of you tied bag. And so the way that the loser's bracket was handled was he gets no say in anything. And then the fourth song was, and we didn't mention this before, but in every round of the heavy division, as I call it, you had first one player picks a song, second picks a song, and then if there's a third song, it was a custom song each round.
Oh, it was? Okay.
It was a custom steps. There was an issue with frequency steps not being in sync, so we had to like redo it. I remember we did Cartoon Heroes. Even the, kind of jumping back and forth here, even the qualifier, we took one of the machines, we put them in a booth in isolation, and it was a custom insertion chart.
Okay.
So there was a lot of custom steps that year. And the fourth song was Sakura.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a little biased on my part. Why were they custom?
I would say, from my perspective, trying to do something different. And I've always had this thing in my mind. I'm not a top level player, so I'm maybe overextending my desire to be creative, let's say. But it's like, you've never played something before.
Okay.
There's a test. It's like you talk about with some of the perfect attack versus 2 out of 3. If you've never seen something before, that is a different skill set to try to attack.
Yeah.
And it was never, and none of the songs were going to be easy. None of them were going to be Freckles level. Yeah. And each round, to the most part, except for, I get, some people debated finals being not as hard, but progressively got harder. Like the Cartoon Heroes custom chart was sort of like what the full version that you can see on some of the ITG packs that are out there. And from my perspective, always trying to be creative.
Okay.
And I actually wanted that to be the last song in 2004, but there was no last song in 2004 because I think in the last round Reflex beat him in 2 songs. So I saved that for 2005, to be completely honest.
Okay.
And you mentioned this about your interpretation of different rule sets and your feelings on them. And I kind of have 2 schools of thought on that. On one hand, I kind of think about it as, if you know what the rules are going into a tournament, you can prepare for them as best as possible. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to be able to, at the time, have AAAs on 256 Extreme songs. But on the other hand, I've experienced what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. I was in a tournament at one of the conventions in West Virginia, whatever it was, DC area, something like that. And they did machine score.
Machine score.
They did machine score. So what does that mean? That means a miss in the equivalency is -8.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a match that I had where the last song was max 300. It was the only time, this is how not up there I am, the only time in my entire life, at least at that point, I ever got a max combo on the song. Mm-hmm. He got 1 miss. He smoked me in the great count, in the perfect count. But because of that 1 miss, I moved on. Mm-hmm. In that moment, I felt like this is unfair. Mm-hmm. So I could relate to what you're saying about how those things set up. But we need to keep in mind that DDR came out in 1998. DDR, for all of us, probably became big in 2001, maybe 2002. For me, certainly 2002 is when I started, really. And Extreme had been out from the end of 2002 to 2005. Mm-hmm. So you often talk about, okay, we're double Aing all the songs, we're triple Aing all the songs. Now let's try to do them on sudden, let's try to do them on hidden, let's do them. There was no standard setup that you could say was established as a fair rule set or a balanced rule set, that no rule set that any tournament at the time could have come up with would have appeased everyone, let's say.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And in my mind, I wasn't even thinking about it on that level. I'll always stress that I've never, ever... I like to say I'm the worst of the best. If you put like the top 200 players in the world, maybe I could qualify, but I'd always get last place. I doubt that's even true, because I'm not on that level ever. So I never really thought about it that much. It was always for me, 2 out of 3. And I never thought about it in the context of what you're calling perfect attack at the time. I just kind of stuck with that formula. But I did experience what you're talking about when they did that machine score. And I'm saying, this is unfair. I shouldn't have moved on. Now, maybe in the time I'm thinking 2 points for perfect, 1 point for great, 0 everything else. But it never really... I was kind of in my own bubble in that way. And I did go to Champions of the Coast before, but I was really just in my world as a DDR player at that time, especially very focused on the business and school and work and digital life. So looking back, it would have been good to go to more tournaments, experience other people's ideas. But you tell me, what did you find of tournaments you run the most fair rule set?
I always thought perfect attack was the fairest because...
Cumulative.
Yeah, because to me, it meant that every step counted. So there was no... the steps were weighted so unfairly, in my opinion. I understand this is completely subjective, but in my opinion, it felt like for 2 out of 3, Paranoid Survivor Max on Challenge and Freckles are basically 1 song each. But we all know that that's not true. We all know that PSMO is way more difficult than Freckles. But if I win PSMO and I smoke the person that I'm playing, and then they beat me on Freckles, and I think the counter argument to that is, well, you should have just did better on Freckles. But
is it possible to argue that it's a different skill set?
I don't think it's possible to argue that it's a different skill set. I think that again, this may be subjective, but I think in the earlier days you can argue that because there were people like Tarsus from New Jersey and David Togo from New York that were good at 10-footers that weren't good at other stuff. Freckles is a bad example, but if I played against David, I would pick Lamore on him and I would beat him by a lot. But by the time Extreme came out, everybody knew everything. So like you had the opportunity. This game had been out for a couple of years already. So the thing is like, I always felt like if I thought about it more, a good rule set could have been like a percentage range. If I get 2 greats on Freckles and you get 1 great, and we play it again, I might beat you. Mm-hmm. Like, it doesn't prove that you're better than me. You beat me, it doesn't mean that like if in a tournament, it doesn't mean that like you shouldn't deserve to win. You definitely beat me, but it doesn't mean you're better than me.
Well, you were definitely more in line with an understanding on this level than I could ever be as a top level player, as a person who's won the championship. So I would default to you in that way. But even I was watching the recent Upbeat in Denver.
Was that the $10,000 one?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I kept telling people like, okay, so this is a competition between Chris for Life for first place and everybody else fighting for second. So when I saw him get third place, it blew my mind.
Oh, I thought he got third.
He got third. He lost in the losers finals to I can't remember.
Was it a Canadian guy? I think it was a Canadian.
Yeah, the Canadian. Yeah, and then they end up splitting first and second for injury and time reasons. But it's like, I forgot what my point was.
We were talking about rule sets.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, I can sort of think about it as, you know, to me, there is a skill between, let's go back to extreme and let's stick with like extreme, PSMoni and memories. Mm-hmm. That just because one is more stamina draining and faster doesn't make that being able to get a AAA on memories is easier. However, and this was part of the issue that you're kind of highlighting, and I think about this, Extreme had been out at that point for almost 3 years without a new mix. Mm-hmm. And at some point you burn out a little bit on what you're capable of doing. So that you could also argue was a reason for custom steps, give people something fresh to try. But my point with Chris for Life is that it's just always clearly if you're a modern day player and you look at the world records, his name is plastered everywhere. Mm-hmm. It's like you could say him and Fafemez are the best overall players in the world, and to the official world championship they go back and forth. But he still lost. I should say lost. Sorry if that's it. He still got third place. He didn't win as I just assumed he would. Mm-hmm. And it's like there could be a lot of reasons for that, but there's so many things that go into these things that I can't understand it from your perspective because you were on that upper echelon and I'm not even close. But that you could make the argument that at the end of the day, I would say as a player, not as a guy running tournaments, because it would be different now and I would default to a lot of other people. Whatever the rule set is going in is what you have to prepare for. And to be able to define best in the world, especially after what I just saw, is too subjective. That even Michael Jordan loses sometimes. Yeah. Even Tiger Woods loses sometimes. But at their peak, they were the best in the world, according to the narrative. I can't think of a specific way to quantify that when you consider, you know, when we were doing Ironman, for example, there was no bar. Mm-hmm. If we were playing with a bar, it might have had a different winner, let's say. How do you define best in that way?
So you just kind of sparked.
It's not. I don't know if it's as pure as. Even though chess, it's a skill. They're both skills. It might not be as pure as chess. Mm-hmm. Because of what if you like twist your ankle in the middle of a song or something like that?
Right.
That doesn't mean you're not the best. It just means you can make the argument that there's different skill sets to look at in that way.
So for 2006, which we can talk about later on, but I remember I wasn't going to enter the tech division. I entered freestyle for 2006, but I remember saying to myself, they should consider a percentage range. What I mean by that is, like for Memories, for example, which was kind of a tricky song if you didn't know the assistic. If we're both within 5% of each other, then we both kind of have that skill level. Let's say Memories, we used to call them like sorrow songs.
Yeah, the sorrow songs.
Off-beat songs, off-sync songs. If we both get 10 greats, or if I get 11 and you get 9, or I get 8 and you get 12, we're both in that range. Like we both have like within 10% of each other. We play it again, I might beat you or vice versa, right? But if we play PSMO and I get like 20 greats, you get 100 greats. If we play it again, you're not gonna get even close. Like if you got,
it's unlikely I'm gonna beat you.
Even 40 greats. So like, I think I remember saying like in 2006, if the first two songs, the people within 10% of each other's score on perfects and greats, then do 2 out of 3 because they're within the range. They both have the skill set. But if on one song the person is like more than 20%, then they're obviously not in the range. So like, do perfect attack, because if like say you pick memories on me and you get 2 and I get 5, and I get pick PSMO on you and I get 20 and you get 100, we're tied. But we're not tied. Like we're not really tied. Like
I know where you're coming from. You could say from my vantage point of 2 out of 3 has an excitement to it. It's more.
It does.
It's more 100%. Easier for the casual person to understand. This person true. Won one. This person won another. Tiebreaker time.
That's definitely true. I wouldn't argue that. That is true, and it does save tournament organizers a lot of time. But
yeah, I mean, you could still do 3 songs, I suppose. But like, if you're tying, quote unquote, in your analogy, all the songs, you could just keep going. I had one of the rentals I did where I participated. It was at a video game shop in Red Bank. I actually participated in it, and I made it. And I told everyone if I make it all the way, I'm not going to take any prizes. And I got to the finals against this girl, and it was the same thing, 2 out of 3 idea. We tied 4 songs in a row. We literally tied 4, including Max Unlimited. Mm-hmm. So it's like there are certain factors involved, and this ties into Ironman, where time management is important. Mm-hmm. That we are here running an event and we have a limit, and we can't allow it. It can't be necessarily endless. Right. If we're doing it at our house, do it all fucking day. Mm-hmm. You can play 1,000 songs if you have to. But I would say I can't, as a player, I would have to default to you more. You're just much more experienced than I am.
I think from a player's point of view, I don't think a lot of people now, I don't know how they do tournaments nowadays, but I don't know if a lot of people would agree with me. But at the same time, I think a lot of people are, and I do want to talk about Ironman, so I don't want to lose track, but I think a lot of people are back to the level of like, there's like, 30 to 50 people in the world who are basically at the same level, more or less. Like,
kind of, yeah.
So then it's like, okay, 2 out of 3. 2 out of 3 from like a general standpoint. I always think that perfect attack is the best way to go, but in general, I would.
Well, I guess now would be marvelous attack.
Marvelous attack, right? So marvelous is. Oh, the machine does that for you now, right? Like, marvelous is like 3 points, and then perfect is 2 points.
I think dance points it's 3, 2, 1, yeah. Okay, which is basically what we did back then without the marvelous.
Yeah, so I it's a little different now, but
and you might get points for freeze arrows as well.
Okay. But yeah, like I think that from a casual point of view, I agree 100%. 2 out of 3 makes a lot of sense, and is not completely unfair. I just, from like a player standpoint, I wanted to. If I was getting 20 greats and you were getting 100 greats on PSMO, and we both got around the same greats on memories, like I didn't want to lose like that.
It might make more sense nowadays with the sheer amount of. I'll just use the old rating, 10 foot plus that exist. Mm-hmm. But back then, Max 300, Max Unlimited, Legend of Max, Paranoid Survivor Max Oni. That's it. What else was there on that upper echelon that was on Extreme? Maybe you could talk about So Deep. Mm-hmm. Maybe Flash in the Night. That was only on Max 1. Max, yeah.
This is a point that Deshaun brought up. He said like there was nothing to counter Max Unlimited.
And that's the thing. It ends up being... You end up biasing the tournament towards a few select songs, and everything else becomes irrelevant because of the sheer volume of those songs. Where like, in today, if we did something like that, there's a lot more dynamicness. You could just pick Max 360 Challenge and Elemental Creation Challenge if you really want to maximize that difference. But you could make the point that it back then you're making it a 10-footer tournament when there's not enough 10-footers to go around. Mm-hmm. And so to have the skill set, let's say, of being able to PA the sorrow type songs, the offset songs, or dare I say some of the quote-unquote easier hard songs, if that's a valid oxymoron, there's still a skill set there. I would say that's all been usurped at this point on some level, because of how hard the game has gotten and how far along the players have gotten. They're ridiculous, but this could be an infinite discussion, I would say. And what they do now in some of these tournaments is 2 out of 3, 3 out of 5, but they have a website to choose songs based on difficulty and steps. And it'll randomly pick the 3 songs, and there's like a protect system, a veto system, etc. I still have to learn fully what it is. You don't get to go in necessarily knowing what you're going to play. You get told what the choices are. And then between the opponents, you end up deciding what it's going to be based on that randomness of what's picked.
That's I think I've seen a couple tournaments like that, and it's always interesting to see how those play out.
It's a lot easier when you have 700 songs to choose from.
Yeah, well, yeah. Back when we were playing, it was extreme, like 200.
248 to be exact, I think.
So with Ironman, I don't remember. This is the way I remember Ironman. The way that I remember Ironman, you said that you said it was like a rule change. I don't remember it like that, but I also don't remember specifics. What I remember is being on the pad, and then the pad was giving out.
Yeah.
And I knew, because I knew what it was. Like I didn't know for sure if it was like a soldering thing or like but I knew it was a PS2 installed on the machine. And I was like missing steps on Max Unlimited. And like I knew Unlimited, I knew how to stealth it. I did have trouble in the beginning of Unlimited, the steps, the jump in the beginning. Mm-hmm. So I think I did get a miss on one of those, which that I wouldn't have complained about, but I was missing on like quarter notes. And I remember being upset because I was like, in my head, I was like, I'm winning Ironman, because nobody's gonna have more stamina than me. That's the way that I went into that tournament. I was like, nobody's beating me in Ironman. Even if I didn't win tech, which I really wanted to win, I was like, nobody's gonna out stamina me in the world. And so I really wanted Ironman, and I don't remember if it was Technic or Kaza who won Ironman. One of them won. But anyway, what was your recollection and your experience for setting up Ironman for 2000?
So Ironman was supposed to be 2004, but for tech reasons got postponed. Clearly, based on what you're saying, maybe it wasn't ideal to set up because we didn't have any simple way of connecting to it, grounding issue or whatever. So I just transferred it over to the next year. Mm-hmm. And what I had done was a 20-song nonstop course on DDR Extreme PS2 Japan. And everybody, I guess, knew what the last song was going to be, Max Period.
It was an Oni course, specifically.
No. That I'll get to that.
Okay.
And I'll get to what you don't remember how pissed you were. It was a nonstop course, okay. The main thing. And I had people with stopwatches and timers and stuff. All the different songs that we chose had different modifiers and speed mods, and that's where I realized that I think it was Cartoon Heroes. I set it to like 3x, and at the time that Pickles failed on that, for example. Mm-hmm. But this is where I talk about not being on that top level. I underestimate people a lot. I underestimate them every year because I didn't think it was possible to pass this on nonstop. The first guy who played past the whole thing, including Max Period. I didn't set any speed mods on Max Period. I wasn't going to be an asshole about it. Mm-hmm. But it's like, this is 1x. 6 people passed, including you. And it's like, okay, I have a tiebreaker in mind. The game has endless mode, but that's only going to work for 2 people. Mm-hmm. 6 people, I can't do that. And the time crunch is the thing. I'm running a tournament. We can't be here all day. I can't have people playing. I can't have 3 sets of endless mode, which could last for 3 hours each. Yeah. If I did 1, maybe. And like I said, the point was I underestimated because the non-stop mode in the game wouldn't allow custom steps. If it did, I would have designed it to be impossible to finish, if you know what I mean. You would have gotten to a point where you're just going to tire out. Yeah. So I had to improvise. And I improvised and thought for a minute and said, how can I do this timely? There's no fair way to do this. So I did Ultra 16.
I thought it was the Leisure Road. It was Ultra 16.
Ultra 16 was exclusive to PS2 Extreme. I think Extreme, it had to be Extreme Japan. So I switched Ultra, and you were furious. Because you're like, this is supposed to be an Ironman. Scores not supposed to matter. Oni courses, scores matter. Like your timing matters. And in combination with the frustrations you were expressing with the pad. That had to be, for me, the biggest negative thing for 2005.
Really?
Every other year had big problems, sort of, like I mentioned. That had to be the one that was the most disappointing for me in terms of trying to make it as fair and fun as possible. You were pissed.
I was, yeah, I remember being.
You were pissed when you found out it was an Oni course. Yeah. But this was something you've talked about before. This is a tournament. I'm not in charge. I don't own the Javits Center. I don't own Digital Life. Yeah. I have to come up with something fast. Yeah. And that was it. There was nothing else I could come up with that would have worked. So go ahead.
What I'll say is, if I remember being upset, but because of the way the rest of the tournament played out for Tech, I wasn't upset enough to remember how the specifics of the rule played out. I just remember telling myself like nobody's gonna outdo me stamina wise, and I didn't get to prove that. But because I won the Tech division, I probably just, it overshadowed.
Yeah.
But I do remember I remember asking for my money back, and you were like, no. And I was really upset. And then the MTV comes up to me, and they're interviewing me, and I think they thought that was the actual.
Oh.
And so then there's a clip for the MTV thing that I did, where I'm just like, you hear me say like, I'm really focused on Tech. A lot of the best players of the world are in it. Because what they asked me, they were like, how do you feel now that you got knocked out of the tournament? And I was like, I didn't get knocked out of the tournament. This was like a side. This was like the main tournament.
Yeah, this was just something more for fun than anything else.
And on Sunday, when they followed me, they didn't even send the main guy. They assumed because I got knocked out of Ironman that I wasn't actually that good. So they just sent like a little camera crew.
Oh.
And then they found out that I won, so they got the clip. But because of Ironman, they thought that they were like, oh, we followed the wrong guy, obviously. Like, this guy's not going to win. But I didn't remember.
There's something to be said about that with like this black and white thought of like, they asked me who do I think could win. I didn't know. Yeah. I just, maybe Sketch. That would be the guy that I could think of. I didn't know that you were going to actually win the whole fucking thing.
Yeah.
Excuse me if I shouldn't curse.
No, it's fine.
So there's a bit of they have an ego there. Like they really want the segment to be the best it could possibly be, I guess.
Yeah.
And lucky for them, and good for them, and good for you.
The thing that, for me, it wasn't Ironman. The thing, and this is not me complaining. Like, like the Digital Life was there were amazing tournaments. But for 2005, do you remember the volume issue for Freestyle?
Yeah, I remember that. There was a lot of controversy for that too. The tournament itself was just the convention itself on Saturday was so loud that there was just no way for you guys. I had multiple freestylers who were having an issue being able to hear the song, and certainly if you're doing freestyle, you need to be able to hear it.
Yeah.
When you watch the videos online of that stuff, a lot of that is the song added to the video post-production to make you hear it. So I remember that. That was also an uncomfortable thing to have to deal with. Frequency, I kind of wanted him in charge of freestyle. He won Freestyle 2002. He's an actual dancer. But we were all involved in trying to figure that stuff out. And
I think what happened was, from what I remember, somebody might have failed their song. And then me and Fat Axel, we teamed up. We did 20th of November. We failed.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, that's why I keep getting the Take Me Higher confused with 2005 for some reason. So go ahead.
So we did that, but then like 3 other people failed. So at first it was like, if you fail your song, that's it, right?
It's for those who don't know with freestyle, we always had the rule of to qualify, you have to pass. Otherwise, it's pointless.
Right.
But when everybody's failing for reasons that are beyond our control, it doesn't necessarily take away from the performance.
Right. So it was not just that we didn't memorize the steps, so that Dollar Bill didn't
memorize. Now I want to see a performance of the Angel, by the way.
Yeah, that video is hard to find. I might have it on my computer. It's definitely not on.
I need to see that one.
But we got.
Because I have a memory of it. I have a very specific memory of it.
It was a good freestyle. We got either second or third, and I think we won a Pop-In music controller for that.
Okay.
From Dumpster Keeper. Like, he was the one who was making those in the 2DX controllers. But we placed in that tournament. Why can't I remember who won? Was it Jing?
Jing won freestyle that year, yeah. He won first place.
That was actually, I do remember now. And that was
and one of the things we didn't mention, there was freestyle and there was improv.
Yeah, that improv. That's on YouTube. Me and Angel did Sauna.
Yeah, the Sauna improv, yeah.
But that was fun, yeah. But is there anything else that you wanted to point out for 2005 or?
Yeah, hold on. So I always get it confused with your Take Me Higher routine, but like I said, one of the guys working for Konami in America was one of the judges as well. We actually had, I think, like a mini celebrity judge too. I don't remember the others. I just remember him. Okay. He had provided us with, I don't remember which version it was. They used to have those like DDR music CDs with like, and I remember it was the one that had the long version of Midnight Blaze. I love that version. Mm-hmm. I swear he gave us like 800 copies to give away.
Oh, wow.
Hundreds. T-shirts. And I thought it was Take Me Higher, but it was a different song with Angel. In the freestyle, it was scores of like 1 to 10 for all of the performances from each judge. Mm-hmm. And they hand me the score sheet. You guys got perfect 10s. I just looked at them and like, oh, wow. Like it was that good to, like it was that impressive. Now I want to see it because I'm misremembering. Now I really want to freaking see it. Little side notes. I think it was Sunday. Everybody was hungry, was working, and I, Steve and Josh and Aaron, who was helping out on top of Frequency, Ash, Corey and Mike and other people as well. Forgive me if I've missed anybody. So I told them, go to McDonald's, get 40 hamburgers and 20 cheeseburgers. So they told me they went to McDonald's and they pretended to look at the menu for a while and they're like, yeah, let me get 40 hamburgers and 20 cheeseburgers. And all of the employees, they said, went like this. What? And they're like, I'm serious. And then they handed them the cash. Apparently it took them like 15 minutes to prepare, and there was a line out the door. You know the McDonald's around the corner. Yeah. And then they brought it back, and I swear they were gone in 6 minutes. All 60. We had doubles that year.
Do you remember one?
J-Boy.
Oh, okay.
J-Boy was there all weekend.
What's he complaining about for? He complained about that tournament so much. He got third place and then one doubles.
He got third place in the main one and one double. He's still a competitor, apparently. Really
yeah,
good.
I've seen his videos. He plays Pump It Up still. He plays.
I'd love to hear what his criticisms were, just for feedback.
I mean, it was a long time ago, so you know how things after a while you just remember the fondness of it. I remember going to his live journal, if you remember live journal, and him like making this long post about how dirty New York City was and how bad the tournament was and how poorly it was run, and I remember commenting on it. I was really upset because you know you're a New Yorker. Only you can criticize New York. But, I was just like, I just remember being upset that he was so critical about it. But I do remember him playing doubles, and he was a really good player, and he was good at doubles. So I'm not surprised.
And I've heard I don't know, man. He might have been part of the one in Denver recently. I'm not sure about that, but yeah, he's still going. But he won doubles. He got third place. Pickles got second place both years, which was really impressive. Mm-hmm. I think I might have the place wrong, but there was a kid there with his mom from Italy.
He was, yeah. His nickname, I've been trying to, I don't know how to pronounce this. It was like, the Americanized version is Quererno. Okay. I think it's Quererno. He was one of the best Italian players.
I think he got sixth place.
Yeah.
And wasn't he like 12 years old at the time?
He was young, yeah.
We had a couple of people who tried to qualify who were like 8 years old, 9 years old. Some of them did okay as well. Mm-hmm. The thing that stands out the most, and I mentioned this before, was freestyle on Saturday. I swear there was like 600, 700, or 800 people watching at one point. And it was just amazing to be the star of the show every year. You know, for all of us to bring this together as a community. People like to say, I ran it. People like to say, I'm in charge, blah, blah, blah. Sure, I started the ball rolling. I provided my machines the first year and the second year. But without Frequency, without Osh, without Mike, without Corey, without you and Pickles and J-Boy and everyone involved, this wouldn't have happened. Mm-hmm. The people with Ziff Davis Media who were running Digital Life, you know, putting their faith in us to do it a second time, to spend $25,000 just to be able to have this. Yeah. I don't like to take credit for it as a person, because you were even mentioning the other video, what were my intentions here? It's like, I never really had any ideas for this business that I was running to be big. I did think about it in 2006. That was like an inflection point. But it was never an intention of, I'm going to make a bunch of money off of this. I didn't make any money off of 2005 directly. We didn't make any money really off of the...
I don't think it would have been bad if you did, but I just,
Well, we're charging $10, $15 per person for entry. And that's the only money we're directly taking in. And it's more a point of, I think, to not allow, like, if we make it free, we might have like 500 people enter, just want to enter for the sake of it. Yeah. 2005 was really the best year.
The one thing that I remember from the setup of 2005, and I've mentioned a lot of the stuff in my other videos, but I don't know if ironic is the right word. They had a guitar. Do you remember there was a Guitar Hero setup?
Yeah, I think so.
But it was like dead. Because everybody, to your point, everybody was watching DDR. And this is when Guitar Hero was either, it had just come out or it was like...
I think it came out the same year.
It was like, it didn't come out yet, so people wanted to play it, but nobody cared about it. Everybody just wanted to do DDR.
It was mainstream. And I'll talk about that more later when it comes to the future and stuff. But it was a mainstream game. Everyone.
Well, yeah, like I just find it funny that, like... I don't dislike Guitar Hero. I used to play Amplitude a lot. I never really got into Guitar Hero, but like nobody really cared about it. Everybody wanted to play DDR. My memory with you, the funny memory that I have with you, it's not funny, but like when I won, like free, Don's got just total score, like, and he's like announcing it, and he announces my score, and you're like, you're trying to stop everybody.
I'm trying to stop everybody, but I'm just like, yeah, it's like you have a crowd of people rushing up to the machine to hug you and stuff, and I'm just like, whoa, hold on. And then after a few seconds, I'm like, fuck it.
Yeah,
let them have their fun.
Like you didn't want people rushing the stage or whatever, but I just remember in the video, you're like,
yeah. I'm like sitting there, saying, hold on a second, and then it didn't matter. But it was like the guy who'd charge. What I keep talking about, the guy with the mustache, the red hair, he just takes out an envelope and hands you $2,000 cash in front of everybody. That was like, he's the guy who ran the whole event. Okay. The guy who handed you the money ran Digital Life.
Yeah. And so it was 2006, 2007. Was there a 2008?
I don't think so. And to be honest with you, things changed a lot for me in 2006. One of the things I remember, whether this is relevant or not, was In the Groove was becoming more popular.
I was gonna ask why In the Groove. Like I'm okay. I was okay. I've spoken about how much I didn't like In the Groove, but I think a lot of people expected In the Groove too to be 2006, and it wasn't.
I'll have to talk about this more because my involvement changed a lot. And I'm going to get personal here when we talk about it, but I do remember specifically one of the thoughts that stuck with me was I'll just say it was Pickles after the tournament. Don't do it. This is DDR. We're DDR community. It's not that he had anything against the game, but it was like DDR was what we were doing for all this time. DDR is what the mainstream is. DDR is, I'll say, what is sort of legal. We could maybe talk about that a little bit. So it was like stick with DDR was the idea. But like I said, to be honest with you, after 2005, things changed, and you're going to have to talk with Don a lot more about that stuff. Way more.
Yeah, 2006 was fun. I do remember, like, we entered Freestyle. I think we got second. We did the song "Scorching Moon," I think by then everybody, not just DDR players, but a lot of other people had known about Digital Life in New York City. So people were just coming and just trying to experience it, and it just seemed it was always a good tournament to go to. I do remember going to 2007 just to go. There was a little New York City drama in 2007 with the freestyles. There was a guy who used to freestyle a lot, who I think that there was like some bias involved, and him and Angel got into like an argument, because I think Angel was the judge for 2007. But anyway, so 2006, there was a Digital Life. I remember going to Digital Life, and from my point of view, you were still behind it, but in 2006, you may or may not have been as involved as other people knew. So why don't you talk about that a little bit?
So, backtrack a tiny bit because it's relevant. Extreme had been out for 3 years, almost to the day. And Betson, official parts distributor and repair for Konami, was in negotiations with Konami in 2005 to bring it back. Okay. Everybody thought Extreme was the end. Everybody thought that, Max Period, whatever, with that stuff was the end. It just felt like a send-off. And some people just think Konami dropped the ball. But I remember talking with some of the Betson executives about this because it was part of my business. And when I mentioned sort of legal, we need to keep in mind that most of DDR in America were imported machines at the time. Yeah. And on the machine, when you log in, for sale and use in Japan only, Korea only, etc. They did have DDR USA, but they were trash. Mm-hmm. And they weren't very widespread. So I don't know any details about this, but Konami was sued over licensing stuff. So that could have played a big factor in, let's say, the delay. But as time went on, Betson was able to convince them to bring it back. And so I remember in January of 2006 was the first beta test of Supernova publicly. Mm-hmm. And I, at this point, was in an inflection point with DDR. Like, maybe I could expand this business. Mm-hmm. Maybe I could buy 10 of these Supernovas. Probably would have cost like $200,000. Get an investor involved, distribute them across the country, have people do it, and do something big with this. Mm-hmm. So I actually flew out to California to see the machine, mm-hmm. and I met JSB at the arcade. I believe JSB may have been the first person, at least in America, to pass Fascination Max because it was extra stage. Yeah. I think he might have been. Okay, but I saw the machine. I saw what it was. I also went to their beta test in Chicago with my friends Sarah, Corey, and Tim. We drove out there. One of the things I noticed, which sounds silly, was they removed the handles.
What do you mean?
So I'm a guy transporting this stuff everywhere, and on the side of the old cabinets are these little handles you could use to they removed them. That wasn't that big of a deal, but in my mind, I'm playing this as a player. I'm not on your level. This is a reskinned Extreme with new songs. Mm-hmm. That they didn't change anything. The game has been the same for 3 years now. And all we have here, I'm not saying it was bad. Of course, people would argue about the sync issues, and it was good that they could distribute updates and fix those and add songs. I'm not saying it was bad. My mind, from a business perspective, said too little too late. That you should have come out with this 2 years ago, even a year earlier. Maybe every other year would have been enough. But it was just that extra time. And I was doing a rental to Otakon in the summer, the convention in Virginia. I don't know if it was the biggest anime convention at the time, but it was up there. Pretty big. And as a Metal Gear fan, that was really like tickled my fancy a little bit, even though that's silly. And they wanted both machines. They wanted Extreme and Fifth Mix. Mm. And in the transport, there was a loading onto the van, the Extreme machine. There was a problem with the back door. I think it was my own fault, and it burst the monitor. And so, like I said, the whole thing was always I got to get out if I think the game's going to wane. If these are going to lose value, I don't want to lose the value of them when I'm selling them. Yeah. And after that burst, I was burnt out. And I looked at Supernova and said, I don't think this is going to fly the way that it did before. Yeah. I think this is the time. One thing I didn't mention before that's ironic, and I've heard this from musicians, I was playing DDR chronically at the beginning. Always at the arcade, loving it. The day that I started waning as a player was the day I bought my first machine. That's something about having it at the house. You just weren't as consistent. And for me, a lot of that is the social aspect. Today I've got arcade pads in my garage, but I'll still drive, at least when I'm at home, 2 hours sometimes in traffic to Round 1 in Long Island. Not because I want to play DDR, just play in my garage. The social aspect is a big thing for me. And so you could say social life really helps me, but I kind of stopped playing DDR in 2006. I stopped going to the gym in 2006. I stopped eating decently in 2006. Not like my diet was great at the time, and I was 200 pounds in like June, and a year later I was 260 pounds. And it was also the worst year of my mental health. I really don't remember much about Digital Life 2006 at all, other than the Maxim girls.
Yeah.
Because I've seen that, you put it on your thing and stuff. I was having a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety. I was having, in that year, full-blown panic attacks where I couldn't breathe. And nothing was working. So, no joke, maybe the week of or the week before Digital Life 2006, I tried cannabis for the first time in my life. I was 25 years old. And it worked really well, too well. Like, I was high off my ass when it first happened. My friends would be like, reminding me like I had like this accent about me, this urban cowboy accent, whatever. So, but it helped me to have positivity at the time in my life. But it also became a big part of my life really quickly, I guess you could say. And when it came to directly being involved in Digital Life, like the actual event, I don't remember a damn thing. I remember being so high on the Saturday that I didn't show up till like 5 p.m.
Oh, wow.
And it was like the tournament each day was over at 6. Mm-hmm. So it's like my involvement, I can't speak for anything past 2005. And I'm going to talk about this more if you have other things you want to mention, because there's, like, I did get back into DDR, and there's a big story there for me about that. But I have to just be honest and say that this entire time, I'm not mentally sound, very emotionally dysregulated. I still, deal with stuff now, but I've done a lot over the last few years to get where I'm at. And it was cannabis that you could sort of say saved my life, but in the long run, there was a trade-off there as well. But I got out of DDR that year. I got out of the business. I sold the machines. And my idea was right. I was right. I timed it right. You could say, I think I bought the first machine for $5,400, the second machine for $5,000. I sold one of the machines for $4,700 and the second machine for $5,000. Mm-hmm. So, and then a few years later, you could buy them for like $950. So it was like there was a drop, and I thought DDR was going to die, and I'm so happy I was wrong, but it certainly waned in America. Supernova just didn't do it.
Yeah.
It didn't, and a lot of people fell off in that time period. And I was involved in 2006, and it was a different time. I do remember the biggest difference, which has nothing to do with DDR Digital Life, was YouTube. YouTube was launched in 2005 by a couple of guys. Google bought it in 2006. I didn't even know what it was. I think Digital Life is where I was introduced to it. And it's like, oh, don't worry about it, because in the years prior, you had people filming, you upload it to your website, you have a limited bandwidth. Yeah. And it's like, I really had to manage who's watching and stuff, because you don't want to go over your bandwidth. It's so easy. Yeah, just upload it to YouTube. It's fine. Yeah. It's like, wow, like this is incredible. The players were a little bit different. The criticisms were a bit more. They weren't my machines at that point. I don't even know where they got them from, but they were Supernova, I think it was.
It was Supernova, yeah.
And I have maybe because I was high off my ass, maybe. I really don't remember much than that. I remember YYR was involved in helping out.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, YYR was a big help in 2006.
His name pops up. Like, if you talk about the history of New York, DDR, New York City, his name always pops up. I think he's like a game developer. Like, he has. I
believe so. And we were chatting coincidentally on the live stream for the Denver tournament recently. He was in there. I just said, "Hey, it's Sammy from Digital Life and stuff," and he was like, "Oh my God, Sammy, how are you?" and stuff. I remember him being a big help in 2006. But I would say that was at the point where, and this is what I say about a lot of the memories that we might not have. Hopefully, Don, Frequency, and Ash have more of a recollection of these things. Mm-hmm. But I can't speak much about 2006. I remember more criticisms of certain things, like, oh, these guys don't know how to fix a machine and stuff. It's like, well, yeah, I don't work for Betson. Yeah. I might have owned them and had some knowledge, but I'm not a tech. I always like to say, with all of this stuff, I'm a guy going to college for business who has business aspirations, but never ran a DDR business for for profit, like big profit reasons and independence. Yeah. I'm just a player with a couple machines. And I checked out at that point. And I say that because once I stopped playing DDR, once I stopped exercising, once I started eating like the glutton that I am and can be to this day, my mental health and my physical health went to it was the worst year of my life. It was literally one of the worst years of my life.
It's not just DDR in 2000s. It's like it kind of coincides with like the fall of what a lot of people would say DDR until Ace. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like Ace was like the first
Ace was the thing that a lot of people give credit for bringing back to America.
Yeah, but in 2006, it was just like you were kind of in parallel for reasons related and not related to.
Well, I think there is some relation there. The lack of exercise, the lack of the community, the fact that I've got my own serious problems to deal with in that way. It was just a nightmare of a year. I started a new job and it was a very challenging transition. I wasn't getting good sleep. Maybe if I kept playing, it would have been a little better. But that, like I said, even when I was running the tournaments, I was dealing with this stuff. Just didn't want to talk about it until we got to this point, because that was the year where I started cannabis for the first time, which is the only outside substance I could take, medicine, if you want to call it that, that helped. At least to have positivity in my life, but it is what it is. And so I can't speak much about Digital Life in 2006, and I don't even remember 2000. I don't even think I was involved in 2007. I know Don was.
Don was, and yeah, like because of personal reasons, I would say that 2005 was my favorite year, but I think 2004 and 2005 were magical.
Yeah, there was magic there. There were magic there. There was not the same. What I remember of 2006 is not like I wasn't involved at all, but I have very few memories of it completely, way less than the others. It wasn't the same.
I'm glad that you didn't put in the groove, and I know that for people watching my videos, that may come as not a surprise, but I think that what you said about Pickles, like he verbalized it pretty well. Like I didn't like In the Groove for a lot of reasons, but I think at the end of the day, that's what it was. It was a DDR thing, and I'm glad that people like him. I don't know if you remember Matt Vanston from Pennsylvania, Cucumber. I always gave
very familiar name.
Yeah, I always gave some people credit for having the foresight to see that DDR was DDR and In the Groove was In the Groove. I would say it's easier to see that with Pump It Up, because the arrows are diagonal. Yeah. As simple as that sounds, I feel like it was easy for the Pump It Up and DDR community to split off because it was very noticeably different. But because In the Groove had up, down, left, right, for a while, people seemed to kind of mush them together. One
of the problems that Rockstar ended up having with Konami was that the initial In the Groove 1 was just plastered over Konami equipment. And I never played that much In the Groove at the time, and you know, I live relatively close. I'm temporarily living in central Jersey now. So I'm a half an hour away from 8 on the break. And I have a therapy group I'm going to that's like 15 minutes away from me on the break. So I always play Step Maniacs now when I go there. Part of that has to do with the way that the DDR screen is there. So it's like I can see a difference in Step Maniacs versus In the Groove. But to me, In the Groove just wasn't the same. And I think there's a certain bias there. It's like, okay, I'm a PlayStation fanboy. I never owned an Xbox. I always owned a PlayStation. So there's some of that. But DDR was what was mainstream. DDR was what was the original. And there's a certain... like the steps in the groove to me had certain types of patterns, and I never played like, what is it, Pandemonium? Is that like the top song of the first one? Is that what it's called?
I think it was the one of the 13 bars of the first.
Yeah, I never got to that level in that game. I played it sometimes, but in my heart to this day, I'm a DDR player. And it's not because it was the popular one per se. It's just what I grew up with in some way, so that's part of it. It just has something about it that even Step Maniacs. The thing that Step Maniacs has is a lot of old DDR songs, so that makes it a lot easier to feel that way. And the step patterns are more in line with what I would prefer, I guess, compared to In the Groove, which at the time felt a bit more, I don't want to use the word simplified, or repetitive. It was just something about it wasn't the same. And that could be just, we played DDR first. There's somebody who is younger who maybe played In the Groove first would say the same thing about DDR. It's not the same. Maybe.
I definitely share those sentiments, and I've said similar things while talking about DDR and In the Groove to other people. And I think that In the Groove has like overall, like I've had a lot of gripes with the community, but overall I think it has like a very beautiful and rough around the edges community in a good way, in the sense that like they've essentially had to make it work for so long. I know the overarching story about like how Rockstar got sued, and then they've essentially had to make do with like...
Do you know what specifically led to it? The specific trigger for Konami?
I don't know 100%, but in the recesses of my memory, was it the stationary arrows? No?
I'm talking about the PlayStation version. Once they came out with the PS2 version, that's when Konami tried to stop them.
Oh, no, I don't know.
Yeah, they came out with the PS2 version, and that's when Konami... I think it's not Dr. D, it's the other guy who does retrospectives on DDR. Don? ITG? Okay. He has a video that...
DOM?
DOM, yeah. He has a video specifically on this subject that covers this, that once they came out with the PlayStation 2 version, that's when Konami filed a lawsuit. It would have been harder for them to file a lawsuit on imported machines, if you know what I mean. I think. I don't know. But that's where it happened. And it ended up being a settlement where they got the rights to In the Groove. And In the Groove, in a last send-off, did the R21, where the USB, and you could just do your own thing so that it could continue to have life. And if I was Konami, I would almost thank them for that subconsciously, because you could say that the game never died like I thought it was. The 4-panel community never truly died. Right. People like Big Matt have been playing for 20 plus years without a break. And so I can't take away from what In the Groove provided to this world. But as a DDR player, I'm a DDR player, and I'll always be a DDR player. And if there's only an In the Groove machine, I'm going to play it. It's Stepmania. It's simply love. You know, and oftentimes when I'm at home, that's what I'll be running. And Stepmania came out probably early 2001 or 2002, so it can't take away what it did. Communities aside.
Yeah, I agree with that. I have most of the problems I have within the Groove are very personal and subjective, and a lot of it has to do with the community back then. I can't speak for the community now. I can only speak for the community back then.
It's impossible to even quantify that, because they had 3 versions of the game in the arcade, and then it stopped in the mid-2000s, and then the communities released thousands and thousands and thousands of packs, and as a result you have East Coast Stamina RPG, East Coast Stamina. I'm getting you have all these like events they run every year. And that's human beings, players who have no business interest, just trying to have their own fun and have their own exercise and have their own community.
What I always said about In the Groove is that I found it astounding that this community, they weren't getting paid for this, figured out how to sync all these songs, and they weren't getting paid. But Konami, I don't really play new songs when I play Ace, but it just seems like they just can't figure it out, or they couldn't figure it out. It is so much easier
it is probably so much easier on Stepmania to do that. You could just press if the song isn't in sync, you just press F6. And you could sync the whole machine, you could sync each song. It is just designed for that. So there is something to be said in our open source world of how that can have benefits for certain things. It is so much easier on a Stepmania machine to sync a song. For an arcade setup where you have different software and different, I think Ace runs on Windows XP embedded or something like that. Getting a bit technical there. I can't speak for how Konami does that stuff, but it's not. I imagine, when you consider the millisecond, players like Pac Rob that I talked to about this, where he can sense a song is off by 3-4 milliseconds, even 5 milliseconds. And it's TVs, the best TV, the TV I have in my house has it's like a TCL. That's one of the best input lags you're going to find. It's still 12 or 15 milliseconds. And for DDR, when you consider that that's a perfect timing versus a marvelous, I can't. I have more, not sympathy for Konami in that way, but it's not as simple as Stepmania. Stat Mania makes it easy for each player to fix every song. Because oftentimes you'll download, let's say, DDR packs that have existed online for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And there's still songs that are clearly off sync. And then you just fix it yourself. So it's simple. And maybe that's the open source love nature that people have for this stuff.
Yeah. So with you, 2006 being a hard year for you, and then you not playing for a while.
I'd occasionally, like, I had my girlfriend at the time. We were in Vegas, and they got a machine at at New York, and I'd sit there and I'd play, and then I'd play Max 300, and because I'm fat and out of shape, fall onto the pads like I'm having a heart attack. Once in a while, I would still do it.
What got you back into DDR?
So to be clear, I'm been using cannabis until this past December, to be honest with you, nonstop this entire time. So that's kind of relevant in some way, but it's 2017, and I'm still pretty heavy. I was probably like 240 at the time. There was a convention in New Jersey called a video game convention. That's the name, a video game convention. I'm with my best friend Corey, the one who worked at Sportsworld. Mm-hmm. We went to go there, and they had an extreme setup, and I'm playing, and we're playing, and I remember, this is of note, we couldn't even pass so deep. I couldn't pass so deep. Mm-hmm. Back in the day, I could get 500 max combo on the song, and it caused me to go online and look it up a bit. And this is going to sound really strange to a lot of people, but I don't know if it was the heavy chart or the challenge chart for Endymion, however you want to pronounce it. Mm-hmm. And I said, what the fuck is this? What has happened to DDR? This looks insane. And one thing led to another, and I end up going to Dave & Buster's in Westbury in Long Island. And I meet Alex McManus is his name. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Yeah. And then one day Matt shows up and says, Sammy? It's like, Matt? And so I just started playing again. Mm-hmm. And I looked into what ACE was. I found out about Chris for Life, and I think they already had won a tournament at that point. I could be wrong. This would have been around the time that Endymion was the extra song, and I don't even know if Ace for Aces had come out at that point. But I just, again, fell in love. Mm-hmm. And psychologically, and I say this to this day, it's my cardio. And I'm trying to make a point here for my health, for my mind, and everything, that I had a relationship in 2000. It started in 2012 to 2014, and it put me in a really bad place for about 4 years. I was at home playing a lot of video games. They have this website called wastedondestiny.com. The video game Destiny. Yeah. I played that with some of my friends. It told me by the time I stopped playing it, 3,400 hours. Wow. In a 2 or 3 year period, and that's not loading time, orbit time. That's shooting time. Yeah. 1,000 hours of FIFA. 800 hours of Metal Gear Solid 5, which I don't have a problem with, because Metal Gear Solid to me is a different animal. I will always love what that game has taught me about life and the experiences I had with that, but not doing anything with my life. I'm just smoking weed, eating a bunch of junk food, getting my health to complete shit, trying different medications while still smoking weed. And then I start playing DDR. And I just, something about it triggered something in my mind. Like, I like to word it that my dopamine receptors are getting burnt out from my lifestyle, from the video games, from the chronic Netflix, the chronic YouTube, not looking for meaningful work, doing nothing with my life. And so in late 2017, as I start playing DDR, I'm trying to take my life more seriously. And I kind of just think that something about the combination of the physical aspect of it and the social aspect of it, especially someone like Matt, who became one of my other best friends and to this day, put me on a path to take my life seriously again. And at this point, I was like 230 pounds, and I set a goal of like, I've always had the goal, if I'm going to try to lose weight again, because the real problem was my diet. I was a fast food. I'd go to McDonald's and get, say, like a double quarter pounder, a large fries, a large soda, 2 apple pies, 3 chocolate chip cookies, a McChicken, 10-piece chicken nuggets. And then I'd be at Dunkin' Donuts getting a large orange juice colada, a large mocha colada, 2 donuts. Then I'd be at 7-Eleven getting Twizzlers and whatchamacallit and Snickers bars and potato. That's my lunch. Like, I can eat like you wouldn't believe, even to this day. I could eat so much food. But I wanted my life back. I wanted to, dare I say, have a relationship again. I wanted to meet girls again. I didn't want to just sit at home all day doing nothing with my life, having no meaning. My mom is a pediatrician. She works like 60 hours a week, and you know, it's not no family is perfect, but she everyone loves her for all the sacrifice she makes for their kids. And I want to get that back. It's like what I had in 2004, 2005 with Digital Life, you could say, was giving a shared experience. And so DDR started me on a journey to get my life in order and get my health in order. And by June, I was 200 pounds. And if anyone is like struggling with this stuff, and one of the things I've learned, because I used to be a personal trainer, and that's my current career path again, is nutrition, personal training, and you could say nutritional psychology. What succeeded me was having a goal beyond the superficial. I got to get my mental health in order. I got to get my life in order. I got to get dating again. I got to get my social life in order. And so I didn't even realize it, like, because I was still eating like not great at the time, like in terms of food choices. But I got down to 200 pounds. It wasn't DDR that did that. It's not like I was playing every day. I still don't play every day. It was the thing that the community, regardless of what the community is now versus then, especially with the smartphone era, that started me on that path. And you know, in 2006, marijuana in some ways may have saved my life, but I was consuming so much of it that it kind of stopped me from having a life. But I was still doing it up until, like I said, a few months ago, chronically. It sort of stopped me from living my life. DDR, in some, I like to call it a butterfly effect, twice in my life, both in 2002 and 2017, completely changed the direction of my life. And you know, basically that's how I got back into it. Was Endymion. Seeing a chart for Endymion in some way got me to go to the arcade.
That's actually inspiring, man. I didn't know it was like that for you. That's pretty cool.
I don't pretend like things were like perfect at that point. Not even close. Like, I was having so many problems still in 2000. This was 2018 really, where I was really getting involved again. Started hanging out at Matt's house again. Started, you know, having more success in my dating life, kind of spiraled from there in a dating sense. But I was having some serious problems. I was living with Corey during that whole phase of sitting at home doing nothing. I ended up going to Egypt in September of 2018, and I basically lived there for a year and a half. I couldn't find any DDR in Egypt. All I could find was Pump It Up. So it was the one time and it was NX. Okay. And there was one place that had like 2015. That was like an hour drive though. But the mall that I could walk to had 2006 NX. So that I would end up, while in Egypt for my dancing games, was Pump It Up. I eventually did order like soft pads and a hard pad to be shipped to Egypt to play there. But like you said before, nothing beats the arcade. Yeah. And that is where I started. This is not related to dancing games per se, but without it, it would never have figured this out. That's where I started to get better improvements in my life mentally through my lifestyle. And one of the things I did early was I've done this 3 times, and to be honest, I sort of did it coming into this. Not exactly. I did something different. I did a water fast, and it was a week of just water. I did it twice in Egypt at a retreat, and I did it once in America on my own. I don't recommend anyone try not to eat food for a week if you're not doing it with a retreat in a nice place with doctor supervision. If you don't know what you're doing, it's really dangerous. But by day 5 and 6, and I know other people, even people in the DDR community, have done it for religious reasons, they all say the same thing. It's so clarifying that, oh my God, I'm cured in this moment. Now, this isn't a life strategy. You have to eat. This is more of an intervention. And it got me to realize in some of the research I've done that, and thinking about some of my other family members, wait a minute. So you're telling me that some of the things I'm consuming, and I've discovered food intolerances that are very severely affected, and some of the lifestyle choices I'm making are impacting my mental health more than anything. Because in these last 4.5 years, aside from the occasional, let's say, Ritalin or Adderall for ADHD, which also has a negative effect on me in some ways, I'm having the best mental health of my life with no medication. I'm having the best mental health of my life with lifting weights and playing DDR and especially going to the arcade and going to round one, for example, or 8 on the break, when I'm with people that I know, when I'm with friends, when we're engaging. There's something so much more positive in that and that doesn't mean that I'm where I need to be. I'm still dealing with things, and my marriage did end last year because of this. But I've discovered how profound. It's so profound how even just specific ingredients, specific medications, and specific things we put in our body, at least for some people, and in the science world, there's more knowledge on this for people with autism and schizophrenia. Not everyone, but maybe a 30%, if you want to just be modest, or that you could treat this stuff through diet and lifestyle. And now, I kind of did a fast this week because I wanted to be as calm as I could for this, to be completely honest. What I did instead, though, was basically just have fish, protein, salmon, sardines, since Tuesday.
That's awesome, man. I did a 72-hour fast a couple weeks ago. That's the longest that I've done. Okay. And I've never done a 1-week fast, but the mental clarity that you're talking about, I definitely... You
could sort of experience it on 3 days. The funniest thing about the first fast I did was on the first time, on day 3, all people could talk about was food all day. Yeah. It's like the hunger is there, but after a few days, your body kind of figures out food's not coming. And as long as you're not like thin, especially if you're like overweight, your body stops sending the hunger signals. You're not as hungry. But it's day 5 and 6. If you're doing a true like 0-calorie fast, or maybe some black coffee, even bone broth, the clarity is shocking. I've never been as mentally focused, stable, and dare I say cured in that perspective as I was. And I know I have people in the DDR community who have done it before that say the same thing, and I always hear that same thing. How do I get that mental clarity back without starvation? Yeah. And it's like, I'm not going to discuss what I'm currently doing as a diet to mimic it as much as possible. It's too extreme. I have done the ketogenic diet on and off, and a lot of what I'm doing are low carb principles. There is a lot of science supporting that. I don't know if it's purely just ketones, but when you're fasting, your ketones are at their highest. The last time I did, I have a blood meter for that. It was like, most people probably don't even know what I'm talking about. It was like 5.0. And like when they're chasing that normally, you're chasing like 1.0. Mm-hmm. There is something about it that just is so clarifying to the mind, so stabilizing. It clears up. Like I have psoriasis in parts of my beers. It cleared it up. So I'm trying to make a point that with DDR really did change my life twice. If I didn't discover it the first time, obviously I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't have Corey as a friend. I wouldn't have Matt as a friend. But there are so many other things in my life indirectly that wouldn't be a part of my life if it weren't for DDR. And in 2017, rediscovering it and getting back into it, it saved my life.
That's amazing. What do you think about the game now? Before I ask that question, let me give you some background in terms of somebody who's asking this. Like, I know very little to nothing about ACE. I call it ACE. It's probably not even called ACE anymore.
You could call them all ACE. ACE 20th anniversary, ACE 3.
So, for somebody, and like from your perspective as somebody who like feels like DDR changes your life, the community, the game, the hardware, the software, the experience going to the arcades. There is one more point I want to touch on that I mentioned earlier about like the how DDR is set up versus other video games that have evolved. But as somebody who has such an intricate relationship with how DDR affected you, what do you feel about DDR now?
Which aspects?
Well, first and foremost, I guess the game itself, like the visuals, how it feels to play on the machine, and you said Supernova. Basically, I think a lot of people agree Supernova sucked. There's no disagreement there.
I was looking at it somewhat from a business perspective, but as a player, it was just, this is a reskinned Extreme with new songs. There was nothing else that was changed about
for
it.
Supernova. But what about? So, how do you feel about Ace?
I wish it had courses. It does have non-stops now on some level. Technically, it has like the dance stuff. I don't play it much. It's different. There's 700 songs. The hardware is better in some way because you have a bigger screen. A lot of people don't like playing on the gold cab because of the different timing on the LCD. I actually like that big monitor. The setup I have at home now is arcade pads, but I got rid of the cabinet, and I just have a 55-inch LCD, so maybe that's a part of why. The biggest issue I'd have with it, but this is more a home version thing, which you wanted to talk about. It's not easy to get new people into it the same way. I think part of that is the way the community is structured, but part of that is, for me, the best way to get a new player to fall in love with DDR is to have them play the lesson modes on PlayStation, especially Supernova 2 mission modes and things like that. That's how I learned it. I feel like trying to teach a new person in the game is more challenging. It's good that they changed the rating system because,
I agree with that too.
Because ND Meon, Max 360, etc., Paranoid Revolution are not the same difficulty as Max 300 or Max Unlimited. Can be overwhelming a little bit when it comes to the completionists. When people get those lamps, as they call them. There's so many to choose from. I like the fact that there's pop songs for those new players, and I actually loved Happy. It was one of my favorite songs, even if it wasn't that hard. So I was kind of sad when they took that out, but licensing is licensing. And it's hard to say, really. Like, I don't really have a strong opinion about it in that way. It's just DDR now, and it's just good to have it.
I think that's one of the reasons why I do like Ace, is because it's not that it has to be spectacular. It just hits the bare minimum of what the mixes used to be. It's very different than Extreme, and it's very different than 5th Mix and Max and 4th Mix Plus. But like, it feels like DDR did. Like a lot of us came out the woodwork in 2016. Me, Angel, Stefan started playing again. So many people who hadn't played for years started playing again, because it wasn't like, oh my god, this is amazing. It was just like, oh, okay, this feels like kind of like Extreme, but if it had Marvelous's, but it doesn't feel like Extreme. But it's like, I didn't feel like I was missing something. Supernova, you felt like you were missing something. And then the other ones was X and X2. Like, those were just...
I stopped. I have no real... I recently played on a Supernova 2 cabinet, which has this battle mode. And it's like, you could pick any song you want, but it's like ridiculously hard. Like, they put like a million modifiers that keep... I don't know. I have no real knowledge of all of the mix. And a lot of those didn't come out in America. I think Supernova 2 did. I think X did. But everything after that until Ace was in Japan. So you had to import it and stuff like that.
Yeah, but Ace does feel like it's a good DDR mix. Or, well, whatever. Like, this iteration of DDR from 2016 to now, it's good.
It feels really good. It feels polished. I can't speak for timing because I'm not precise enough to judge that per se. Other players who are more higher than me can feel when things are off. But it's got a lot of songs. I know people find the 19s to be stupid for the most part. that
those are like the most difficult songs.
The highest difficulty songs. You've got 16th notes at 440.
Really?
Yeah.
How many of those are there?
All of them, except for.
No, I mean, like, how many 19s are there in the game?
I think 8 or 9.
Oh, okay. So like the new 10-footers, like.
Sort of.
Yeah, they're much more difficult.
It's a different way of thinking about it because of the fact that it goes from 1 to, I want to say 20, but they haven't come out with a 20. But and you could sort of see like each difficulty level on single player. Because I do play doubles a lot, but it's different. I'm just focusing on single player. There's something that they change. So the 19s add those 16th notes at high speed in certain sections. Mm-hmm. The 18s are often just really like stamina draining, like Paranoia Revolution and Max 360 heavy. The only thing it's missing to me is Oni courses. It does. I don't really play them too much. It has non-stops, and for cardio purposes, I want to play those more. Because, like I said, this is my cardio, and I often think of it that way. Especially if I'm playing by myself. Like I'm going to try to get my heart rate to a certain level today, or different heart rate tomorrow, whatever. But I enjoy it, and as a big, I've realized something in my whole life as a gamer. I've been playing, I remember when my mom and dad bought us the original NES when it first came out. I've been playing games since I was 5 years old. And I had a lot of negativity towards Konami, but that was because of Metal Gear Solid 5 and the big controversy with Hideo Kojima and Metal Gear and PT and Silent Hills. For those who don't know, it was just like the biggest video game news story of the time, where he quote-unquote got fired allegedly. But I look back and I say, most of the games I enjoyed the most as a child, the game that saved my life, the two biggest games of my life are Metal Gear Solid and Dance Dance Revolution. And they both came from Konami. So I just learned to not focus on the little things there. Mm-hmm. That I don't want to complain about the nuances of the game that say. I just want to enjoy it.
What do you think about the community? As somebody who also doesn't really know or participate with the community anymore,
I don't pretend to participate too much, other than the New York scene, and especially with Matt and stuff. It's a extension of the real world. In some ways, you have issues at times of people that come up with people because of, and I blame smart modes for this a lot. When we were playing, there were no smartphones. Mm-hmm. And there are times where I go to Long Island and everyone, when they're not playing, is on their smartphone. And those are the moments where I feel more depressed and more lonely and more sad. It's like, like I said, I've got my own setup at home. I've got other DDR setups at arcades that aren't far from my house. There's even a Step Maniacs 10 minutes from my house if I really want to play. My house in North Jersey, not my house in Central Jersey. And now I'm close to 8 on the break. So it's like I kind of appreciate what you're doing with this series, that retrospective, that people might not realize how big DDR was back then. And I'm going to touch on this more like before we finish, though, because of my own crazy thoughts about the future.
So the one thing that I will say, and this is, you may agree or disagree with me. If I'm going to complain for a minute, I don't like that Konami has made it so that you still can't reliably play such a cool game at home. What I'll say is this: every arcade game that has made it big, racing games, Initial D, fighting games are the best example of this. Now, I don't need $2,000 to $5,000 to buy an MVC2 cabinet. If I have $150, I can get an arcade quality stick, and I could play Marvel at home, Street Fighter, Tekken, whatever. Konami's the only company, and this is me speaking for people who love playing DDR, like a lot of the people you mentioned. People like Chris Chaik should be able to spend $500 and play DDR at arcade quality at home. All the stuff you were talking about transporting the machines, we shouldn't have to be transporting arcade machines. It should be we get 6 home pads that are arcade quality, that are $1,000 each. And
each player or both?
either something more affordable than trying to go on like Facebook groups to buy a machine that is like 15, 20 years old. Like the fact that Konami has let it get to this is like pathetic. And what's gonna happen if Dave & Buster's goes out of business, or Round One goes out of business, or they just pull out and just go back to Japan? Then what are people gonna do?
Well, you know? I can't speak for that. You know, I know what you're saying. I can say that when it comes to Ace, Dave & Buster's and Round One have exclusive rights.
They do, yeah.
Konami wanted 50 machines bought initially for Ace, $20,000 a machine, so $1 million investment. So they worked together to bring DDR back to America. Konami is a publicly traded company. They're a for-profit business. I can say with certainty you're not going to be able to manufacture, and there's a big difference. I did this. I bought a Street Fighter 4 PS3 arcade stick that had low quality parts.
Okay.
Took out the stick, took out the buttons, and bought Sanwa, high quality parts, instead of buying the professional one and having it pre-built.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to make a home pad that is affordable that will match the quality of the arcade.
But the Maniacs pads are.
But those are $1,400 a pad, and they sell out in 10 seconds.
So the first thing that you said, I think that's way better.
And the difference is that Step Revolution, whoever the company true name is not in this, is a more specialized company. Konami is a big company.
That's true.
They don't just make arcade games, they make slot machines. Everyone likes to tease them for their Metal Gear Pachinko and things like that. They're a publicly traded company. It's pretty clear after what happened with Metal Gear that they're focused on mobile games and how much cheaper they are to manufacture. They're also kind of shut down the American division. It's all in Japan. They're biased to Japan. Even the KAC championships, they set up the rules to have more Japanese players than American players or foreign players. But now I will say this, and I don't know if they came out with this, but there have been images of a home pad from Konami in Japan.
I've heard of this, but I think that what was that, like a year ago?
It was like a year ago, and maybe, and they do have DDR Grand Prix, and I will say that DDR Grand Prix setup is ridiculous. The way that you have to pay
right?
Yeah, it's like, that's a great idea. Thanks for having a PC version. Why are you charging per song?
Well, how are people going to play a PC version? Not going to what?
Charge for the game.
No, but I mean.
Oh, what pad are they going to play on your side?
They don't even make plastic pads.
Right. They don't even distribute the soft pads anymore. It all I like to word it like this. From what I learned in college for business, it's one of the things that people don't like about, let's say, corporate greed, let's say. And I'm not saying Konami's greedy. I'm just saying it's not for profit. It's for profit at any cost. And how are they supposed to make money doing this? When I look on the Facebook group recently for DDR ITG, and there's multiple groups, what is there? 2,600 members? Like, how many pads can they sell? Now, that doesn't mean they can't. And that before we end, I'm going to talk about that because of the future, like I said, that they don't realize what they have here. Mm-hmm. But in the current trend, how do we make money doing this? And they make money by selling those machines to Dave & Buster's, charging the online subscription. I'm sure the same thing in Japan. And it's sort of like a casino. You know, I used to play poker for a living. In fact, I funded my poker career with the DDR machines I sold. Poker rooms don't make money for most casinos. Borgata in Atlantic City being an exception. They make money on slot machines. They make money on table games, mostly slot machines. Poker rooms exist in most places so that the husband or whoever can bring their wife there to play slots. It's almost there to have to almost have more of almost like a pride thing. But they're not there making a bunch of profit off the poker room. Borgata was able to do that. It's sort of the same thing. Like, if they're going to be making tens, hundreds of millions of dollars on mobile games, and now they're bringing back Silent Hills, and rumors are they're going to outsource to make proper Metal Gear remakes, which will be what gets me to buy a PS5 if they exclusivize that. Hint, hint, wink, wink, Konami. They have to make money doing it. Mm-hmm. They're not. That's the big difference between someone like that and Kyle Ward. Well, Kyle Ward clearly has a love for this. Someone like Aaron in Japan, who works for DDR, has a love for this. Mm-hmm. Konami's a corporation. And we have to be honest about that the community is going to have to find a way to demonstrate to them that there's profitability there.
I hope that happens, and that's coming from somebody who doesn't even really play anymore. I hope that there's a way for Konami to do that. It's even sad to see people like Chris Chaik. That guy deserves to, as good as he is, he deserves to live off of DDR. Like he should be able to make ridiculous amount of money off of DDR tournaments, and it's just too difficult. You had made mention of your thoughts on the future of DDR, so talk a little bit about that.
So I'll start with this. A lot of people don't like this word. I'm just crazy. I have a lot of crazy thoughts, and I've had an idea for a specific type of event, not like a tournament like Digital Life, but like a specific type of competition for years. I'm not going to get into any details about that unless it actually happens. But when what you're talking about when it comes to DDR, the one thing that you can say in America at least, and this is something Konami could always keep in mind, is when I talk about it being mainstream, go up to any random person. Do you know what DDR is? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times I'll say yes. And if they say no, you know that game with the arrows at the arcade? Almost everyone knows what this game is. And you could say that's one of the reasons Konami is so protective of that property and possibly keeps it going. My point about that is, it's almost like pro wrestling in that way. That pro wrestling has, WWE, whatever, has always gone through phases of popularity and waning. And DDR is a bit niche now. But when we were playing, it was mainstream. It was known. Everyone loved it. And so DDR, Dance Dance Revolution specifically, can always resurge. And that's what it would take in order for Konami to invest more in it, is it has to come back to the public eye. And I am not in a position to do another event right now with my life. I'm coming off of a detox from cannabis. I'm down about 100 pounds. I'm still trying to I'm trying to become a personal trainer. I used to be a personal trainer nutritionist. I'm going back to that. I'm switching careers from IT to give back what I've learned and to make a career out of helping other people, get their lives in order the way they want to for their health, especially their mental health. My thoughts are, and this kind of came in, you're talking about Comic-Con at the Javits Center, and I heard last year that for the first time they had DDR.
Oh, they did? That's
what I was told. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what someone told me. And it says, what if we did it one more time? Mm-hmm. Now, my thoughts are out of this world. I don't want it to just be a random thing. I have ideas that are just completely out of the realm of not reality, but they're kind of fanciful. And I'm not going to discuss them unless somehow we can make this happen. But I would want Konami involved. I would want Step Maniacs involved. Mm-hmm. I would want Andrew Miro involved. I would need to get permission for streaming rights, for music licensing, for songs that don't even exist in any of these games, for my specific dream. And my thought on that, the way that you make it positive, is more, we were always doing it for the community. We were always doing it for the players, for fun. It would be good to do it for like charity. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean there wouldn't be prizes or big prizes for the winners of each event that would be run. And for my personal sake, all I want to be involved in is this one specific idea I have that I'm not going to discuss unless it happens, just because But I want to raise money for mental health awareness, especially what is called nutritional psychology. It is an emerging field about how our nutrition and how our diet, how specific foods impact our mental health, positively and negatively. And to be able to have that as a tool to bring it back to the mainstream, to have a resurgence in the popularity, to show that this can be more than just a video game, because it clearly is. That people who demonize video games, no matter what they know about them, believe them, will never look at a game like this and say this is negative. Mm-hmm. They could look at Grand Theft Auto and make their criticisms and not understand the positives of it. But what are you going to look at an exercise video game where you have all levels? That's one thing about Ace, all levels of fitness. Yeah. You have beginner stuff that anyone can play, and you have stuff that even I can't play, even stuff you probably can't play, to max out your heart rate and everything in between. And even if I was to try to make that happen soon, or if we could try to make it happen soon, when you talk about the community, there's a fracturing there, and that is an extension of the real world on the internet. And it's something that Metal Gear Solid, especially 2, talked about a lot, the small gated communities that we isolate ourselves in. And so for an event like that to hit my heart, I'd want it wouldn't be exactly like it was in the past. No, you have to just let go of the past and look to the future and accept things the way they are on some level. But to have it one more time, to bring everyone together, as many people as can, both live and online, but especially live, to just focus on that screen, those arrows, those panels, those players, and everyone together, and to do something to give back to not just the community, but to the world, and to try to raise money for charity, whether it is mental health or multiple charities. That would be my idea. Ignorant of my specific DDR tournament idea that I have, and then let the other tournaments like tech and standard and doubles and freestyle, I'd rather have other people in the community take care of all of that. But so if there's people out there that want to do it one more time and make something big, and especially if, I'm just going to say this, if Aaron in Japan is watching, you work at Konami, it would be nice to be able to one more time have that special magic we had back then. And we could definitely do it, but from my vantage point, I couldn't do it this year. Or maybe next year. But if there's enough of a movement of people who want a big scale event with big involvement, we could make it happen. It just feel like it shouldn't be for ourselves. It should be for something bigger than us, higher than us, giving back to the world more than giving back to our desire for the love of this game.
That sounds amazing. I don't know enough about whether or not people would come together to do that, but on paper it sounds like a good idea. You know,
if you gave away a DDR machine as a prize, nobody's going to complain about what it is. If you gave away Stepmaniac's pads as a prize, nobody's going to complain about what it is. And if you tie ideas to it that are charity, and you find sponsors, whether it's Konami or other big companies that want to get involved to donate to good causes, nobody's going to complain about that. And even if they do, they're going to complain about the little nuances. You can't, there's always going to be things that go wrong. It would bring people together in a more positive light to do something beyond the game. And that's the way I think about it. If you want them to be involved, they have to be able to make it mainstream again. It has to be in the public spotlight again. And that's what I guess the modern community doesn't recognize about Digital Life, and doesn't recognize about DDR, especially the younger crowd. They weren't even alive for it, a lot of these guys. Like Harajun is one of the best players in the world, but I don't think he was alive for Extreme, if you know what I mean. I don't know, he's still a teenager. To bring it back to that, even if it's just for a year or two, would be the way to get the game to evolve, to get the world to evolve in some way when it comes to that game. And to do that, I feel like you have to promote it from beyond as a game. The health benefits, the social benefits, and in this specific idea, the charitable benefits. It doesn't mean to be a tournament where everything goes to charity. There'd be prizes, and I'd be willing to give away my pads as a prize for what I want to do, which some of the people that I know that are up there said they're the best pads they've ever played on. Thank you, Attican, who I bought them from, for giving me such a great conditioned machine. That's the way I think about it. For my personal life, I have bigger priorities. I'm hoping by the time this is published to have my full certification in personal training, to be on my path to back to nutrition certification, because I'm an IT guy. I've been in IT technically since I was 17, but working since the year 2001, and I'm sick of IT. I'm sick of the direction of it. I'm not saying that it's bad for everyone. It's just not for my mental health. Let's say it's not good anymore. Yeah. This is something where I can make a living giving back to people, especially in the DDR community, and to know it's possible to struggle less without necessarily having to see a doctor, without necessarily having to do shortcut interventions that have all these side effects, that you can just live a more natural life or a more specific life and make trade-offs that can have you have that stability that we're all chasing in some level. To promote that in some kind of big event, and we do everything we can to make it bigger than Digital Life. My ideas are crazy. They're just nuts. Some of the stuff I'm thinking are not possible. They're very unrealistic, but that doesn't mean they're impossible. They're more, we would have to work together and get as many people involved, even on high levels, to make it happen. And that would be the tool to bring DDR back to a place where you could evolve the game beyond to where you're saying. Now, that doesn't mean Konami's not going to do it on their own. Like I said, there is that pad that they're talking about, that I've seen. People were criticizing the idea of a Bluetooth pad. It's like, Bluetooth? Yeah, that doesn't make sense. It should be wired. But that's what I mean. It's like, those are the little things that kind of get under us. The bigger picture is how I focus on. And it's like, I still love Konami as much as I hate them from what happened with certain things. Those things are about video games. To me, DDR and Metal Gear are beyond video games. They're life for me. And so Metal Gear it's not the right word. It's sort of like my religion. It's not a religion. It's more of taught me about existential philosophy, and it warned about what the smartphone eras or the technology era is going to do to the society. Allowed me to learn how to think about life, and DDR gives me a path for exercise, for friendship, for even in that butterfly effect, a lot of my relationships, not DDR players per se, just in that led to that. Yeah. So to give back what I've learned, what other people I know in the community have learned in the similar way, and to try to even help the people in the community who are struggling to know that there's hope away from a prescription pad, away from a drive-through, let's say, that we can still have some of the pleasures in our lives while looking to be able to improve our lives and have that future. Yeah.
That sounds amazing, man. And I don't know how you would do that, but I also don't know how you would have done Digital Life, and you did 2004 and 2005, and those were, to this day, some of the biggest DDR tournaments. This is what I'm told. I don't know that for sure, but I've been told by people who played that Digital Life were some of the biggest tournaments. So I think if anybody could do it, you could do it. So I look forward to seeing.
I would need to be pushed, considering how much I'm dealing with in my own life. I'm still not mentally where I'd like to be, but I'm so much better than it was in the past. Last year I had a lot of issues, and I learned about food intolerances that I've had basically most of my life that directly impact my psychology, let's say, and they affected my marriage. That I had to end my marriage because of it. I was using a lot of. I support cannabis legalization. I support people's usage of it, but addiction is more of a byproduct of how it affects your life. Someone like me who used to go to the drive-thru all the time and eat junk food all the time, and I don't mean just eating it. Like, I can eat. Even now, I could easily eat 5,000 calories, no problem, of even healthy foods without a second thought. It's not hard. It was just like a blind love, playing all the time at the arcade. But once I had it, it's like, I've got it in my garage.
Yeah.
I could play this anytime I want. It's almost like what's known as the paradox of choice by Barry Schwartz. Having that ability kind of took away from it. Like, I felt it like quickly, like I'm not as driven back then to play as much as I was before owning it. And so I've heard this with musicians who they play for the love of the music. They're into it. They're deep into it. Once they start making real money in it, the passion goes away. Not everyone, of course, but a lot of them lose their passion for music once it becomes a business. That I'm less driven to be a DDR player. I'm less consistent. I'm not making the same progress I was making back then once I owned it.
When I brought this up with Deshaun too. Some of the best memories and the fondest memories I have of DDR, it wasn't when I won Digital Life in 2005 or the money. It was the beginning days of Fifth Mix, when we would just all meet up for absolutely no reason. There was not a tournament. There was no money. It was just like, hey, meet up at Fun and Games, or meet up at Fordham, meet up at Broadway City. We would just play to play. And those memories are well, that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this. It's not for Digital Life. Like, I'm proud of that, but I'm proud of other people winning things and that kind of stuff. But it's the beginning days, the third mix days, the fifth mix days, fourth mix plus. If I ever got to play that, or like the first time, Max 300, when it got to a level of stress, that's when it stopped being as fun. But
fifth mix for me too, man. I remember I was still pro wrestling, and I was going to drive one of my fellow wrestlers. We were going to be part of, I wasn't on the show, but like one of the first or second Ring of Honor shows. And this was early in my career of DDR, and I was trying to pass dropout. And my legs just completely locked out before the end of it. You can imagine how much different things are now. Like Charlie horsed the whole legs. I guess I just need a lot more magnesium or something. I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I could drive to Boston with my wrestling friend at the time. I ended up going, and how things, it was just, didn't care. It's just like, I'm just going to play again the next day. I remember No Limit being my first, at the time, 9-footer, because they changed the ratings since then. Hot Limits, one of my favorite songs of all time. It was just, you didn't think about it.
It was very magical.
Yeah, you just played and you just enjoyed and you just loved. It was a form of a high in that way, but not in a bad way.
No, not in a bad way. Those are just some of the best times. So to wrap this up, what I've been doing and what I want to do is I just want to give you your credit. Like I've spoken a lot about you in my previous videos. That like me being mad at Digital Life 2005, that's like a drop in the bucket of my fond memories of DDR and my fond memories of you. You were very influential during that time. You put together a lot of big events, and you were part of the New Jersey DDR community. And for that, I just thanks for everything that you did. Thanks for Digital Life. I'm very thankful that I know somebody like you, and it's always good running into you too, like seeing Matt. And by the way, real quick, I always bring up Matt. I'm gonna get Matt up here, and because Sammy's good friends with Matt. If y'all ever do an award for like the DDR like greats, y'all gotta do something for Matt. Matt's been around forever. Like he needs like a Vanguard award for like being like the homie. I don't know how the community regards him, but Matt's like this. Like I'll fuck somebody up for Matt. Like
Matt's one of the greatest people I know.
Yeah, he's a good dude. So, but thank you for everything you've done. Thanks for coming up here and doing this. And
I want to stress one more time, I thank you for that. I really appreciate it. we did it. The DDR community did what we did back then. I might have started the ideas or whatever, but it wasn't mine. It was ours. And I thank you for everything you've done for the community as well.
I appreciate
especially
that.
this.
I appreciate that. So that's pretty much it. That's I think that was really good. For anybody who's watching, stay tuned for more people coming up. Do you have anywhere that people can follow you on, or do you have social media, or you're not really into?
Right now, at the moment of this recording, nothing to report in that specific way. I'm Sammy Elkassir on Facebook. I haven't updated my Instagram in a while. By the time this comes out, maybe we could put something on the screen. I do have my website for my business that I've started, but I'm waiting to be certified to launch it.
Okay. Yeah, if this comes out before that, I can always update the description.
Yeah. I'm gonna do my best to have. I got a lot of studying to do. It's like a 900-page textbook that I want to finish before I take the test. Yeah. Once I have that, I will have that comfort of publicizing, and just keep playing and keep loving each other, and we can all strive to be better every day if we just believe in ourselves, and to know that our anxiety that we often have is just a byproduct of a world, not ourselves. But yeah, I'll let you know with that. Make it a goal of mine to be ready before this is ready.
Okay.
It's going to be a lot of studying to do up in the next couple weeks and months, but it's part of my plan. Cool. And Shiki Diki.
That's your nickname?
That's my nickname, Shiki Diki.
All right, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.